the sovereign of the desolate sands. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26, Closeness. After they had washed through the water, it was almost completely dark. The two changed their clothes and walked back. Hongfu, what do you think is my current level in Jinhae City? Hong Fan asked. Just talking about Jinhae City, brother Fan, you should be in the hundreds, Hongfu answered without hesitation. Not counting the Shakao Guard in the northeast, there are definitely less than 1,000 people in the city who are above the Guantong realm. As the saying goes, poor students have more stationery, and bad players have better equipment. The same is true for Dahua. In the clan school, it is the children who are not good at martial arts who are most proficient in topics such as family strength and weakness, Guangguang and Qin Kaiwang. Only counting the Guantong realm, there should be more than 80 people in our Hong family. The Li family and the Chi family are less than us, about 120 in total. Hong Fu counted on his fingers and began to play. Counting the city defense department, the city guardhouse, the martial arts academy, the weaponry bureau and their guards, there are at most 500 people. As for those above the Hunren realm, the total number is only about 1/10 of the Guangchong realm. According to your current level of cultivation, brother Fan, you should be at least in the top 600. Top 600, Hong Fan nodded, thinking that this estimate was about right. In the martial arts, the first qualitative change from inner vision to Guantong is the first qualitative change. Jinhae City has a population of more than 100,000, and most of the people do not have the means and resources to practice martial arts. Not to mention the problem of obtaining martial arts, the two requirements of half-time work and adequate food security are not something that ordinary families can meet. Of course, Hong Fan did not think that he was the last of the 600 people. Not to mention the fighting skills he brought with him when his soul crossed over. The sand world alone was enough for him to kill a group of serious martial artists of the third and fourth paths. According to what you just said, the number of martial arts masters in the city guardhouse, the martial arts academy, and the weaponry bureau is far less than that of our three surnames, Hong Fan said thoughtfully. Including the army, there are a total of 500 Guantong realm, and the three major families of Hong, Li, and Qi account for 200. And this base number means that there must be a large number of people from the three families in the above-mentioned official institutions. The so-called economic base determines the superstructure, and productivity determines production relations. With such a power comparison, it is almost inevitable that local tyrants will be semi-separatist. That must be because there are more of our three surnames, Hong Fu replied, obviously not understanding what his brother meant. Zheng Chengxiao is only in the inner vision realm, and Master Wen of the weapon workshop is said to be at the peak of the Guantong realm, but the weapon workshop is not good at martial arts. But Gongsun Wujian, who is in charge of the martial arts academy, is a great master at the level of heaven and man. As one of the last in the clan school, Hong Fu knows all this information. The peak of the Guantong realm is enough to be the head of the weapon workshop, Hong Fan said after hearing this. Dahua's martial arts flourished, and it was surrounded by foreign races. So it gave birth to two huge and powerful institutions, the martial arts academy and the weapon workshop. The Zhangwu Academy is responsible for all the sects, techniques, and martial arts resources in the world. It has a vast amount of elixir refining technology and an independent intelligence and law enforcement system. The weaponry bureau is similar to the military-industrial complex in the previous life. In addition to research and development, it is also responsible for the manufacture of magic weapons and weapons. The highest-ranking art saints in it are said to have power comparable to that of a state governor. Since crossing over, Hong Fan has thought about finding an opportunity to join the weaponry bureau. With the foundation of an aviation engine engineer in his previous life, it should not be difficult for him to rise to the top. But in the end, he decided to make this path as a backup plan. In human society, violence is the ultimate truth. Martial arts is the absolute violence of this world. Therefore, Dahua respects martial arts, and other methods can only be dependent. With the Dragon Soul Tree and the Sand World, Hong Fan does not need to seek far away. The peak of the Guantong realm is not low. Hong Fu did not know his brother's thoughts, and thought that he thought the peak of the Guantong realm was low. After the departure of the Star Lord Jingsha, not counting General Chu Meng of the northeastern garrison, there are two Xianchans in Jinhae City, including the elders of our family and the Li family, Hong Fu continued to count on his fingers. Only counting our Hong family, there are only 6 people in the Hunran realm, 1 person in the Xianren Jiagan and 1 Xianshan, so Master Wen's martial arts cultivation is at least in the top 100 in the city. Hong Fan did not explain Hong Fu's misunderstanding, but just nodded. Jinhe has more than 100,000 people, and it is already amazing to be ranked in the top 100. What about the situation in the state? He asked again. Then I don't know. Our small border town is incomparable to the state capital. Hong Fu shook his head and replied. Of the more than 200 cities in Dahua, Jinhe is not the last, but one of the last. Hong Fan stopped asking and nodded silently. Unconsciously, the two walked to the door of Hong Fan's house and smelled the fragrance of chicken soup in the small courtyard. Hong Fu, I'm leaving. See you later. Hong Fan waved and walked into the yard. Hong Fu slowed down his pace and watched his brother enter the house. As soon as he turned around, he heard the chanting coming from the other side of the wall. The road is long and arduous. I will go home first to eat stewed chicken. The next day, the 4th day of May, Hong Fan finished his morning class in the yard and had dinner with Aunt Liu on the stone table. The meal was not complicated, just a bowl of thick porridge, 2 boiled eggs, a plate of pickles, and 2 pancakes. But even such a breakfast, most people in Jinhe City cannot enjoy it every day. In the clan school, the food is provided by the clan. After leaving the clan school, you have to take care of firewood, rice, oil and salt by yourself. Young master, the clan told me yesterday that the kitchen will take care of the food for another month, until the 3rd day of June. Aunt Liu wiped the last bit of porridge in the bowl with a corner of pancake, swallowed it and said, wait until this afternoon. I will ask the housekeeper to get our last monthly allowance. As she said this, a smile appeared on her face. In the eyes of this woman who has suffered for half her life and has no husband or children, the days are getting more and more promising. All the children of the Hong family will be assigned jobs when they reach adulthood. It's just a matter of good or bad, fat or thin. Although Jinhe City is remote, the cost of simply having enough food for the residents is not high. So there are basically no hungry people in the Hong family. But Hong Fan, who is still eating rapidly, is not as optimistic as Aunt Liu. What he is worried about is not that he can eat as much as 2 or 3 adults, and the large amount of high-quality protein for every meal. For a warrior, no matter how expensive food, clothing, housing and transportation are, how can they compare to the consumption of martial arts resources? After tasting the speed of practice after the top-grade Tuagong pill is fully pulled, how can Hong Fan still tolerate the tortoise speed of the past? Therefore, in his heart, there is nothing more important than making money. With a huff, Hong Fan drank the remaining porridge in the porcelain bowl in one gulp. Then he said as if nothing had happened, and, you take a rest this afternoon. I will go to collect the monthly salary for May. How can I trouble the young master with such trivial matters? Aunt Liu quickly refused. Since the young master's martial arts breakthrough, no one in the clan has given me a cold shoulder. She was afraid of being idle recently. The busier she was, the happier she was. And, I am different now. This time I go. I also want to get close to the housekeeper, Hong Fan said with a smile. He greedily took my 90 taels of monthly salary, so he must get close to him? Hearing this, Aunt Liu smiled and said yes, thinking that the young master was not only enlightened in martial arts, but also more proficient in personnel matters. Chapter 27, Seize the Day. On the afternoon of the same day, in the back courtyard of Hong Mansion. The so-called back courtyard is a house facing south and north opposite to the main house, located at the southernmost end of Hong Mansion. Because its doors and windows face north and the lighting is not good, it is used as a residence for servants. As the head of the servants, the housekeeper's private courtyard is naturally located here. At this time, Chuda, who has a goatee, is sitting in the hall, counting accounts with the door half closed. These 2 days are the time for the monthly payment. As the highest executor, he has a lot of money as usual. Therefore, the more the jade beads on the abacus jump, the more beautiful the smile on Chuda's face, as if he heard the jingle of gold and silver falling into the bag in the quiet hall. Halfway through the account, a servant suddenly came in and whispered that Master Hong Fan from the eldest house came to collect the monthly payment in person. Chuda frowned and smiled when he heard this. As the steward of Hong Mansion, he has always been thoughtful and has been prepared for Hong Fan's promotion to the Guantong realm. Opening the drawer, Chuda took out a cloth bag containing 5 taels of silver and gave it to the servant, asking him to deliver it to Hong Fan. 3 taels of silver were the monthly allowance for this month, and the rest was a gift from him as the housekeeper. Of course, if Aunt Liu came today, she would only get a cloth bag containing 3 taels of silver. But not long after the servant left, heavy footsteps sounded at the door again. Chuda, who was most annoyed by the noise of others when settling accounts, was about to scold when he saw the half-closed door being pushed open by one hand. A handsome young man came in with the sunlight. It was Hong Fan, who had chosen Jiang Yao the day before. "Why is Master Fan here? Did it AG deliver the monthly allowance to you just now?" Chuda stood up and asked with a smile. "I delivered it. I also received the kindness of Chiu the housekeeper." Hong Fan's hands behind his back lit up, and he was holding the cloth bag containing 5 taels of silver. "Does Master Fan have anything else to ask me?" Chuda said politely, thinking that the other party probably came to thank him. The so-called reciprocity is to give each other respect. But he didn't expect that Hong Fan actually nodded and said, "I do have something to ask the housekeeper." "What is it? Is there anything the servants haven't done well?" Chuda was stunned for a moment and asked. "No." Hong Fan shook his head and took 2 steps forward to approach Chuda. "Hong Fan came here to ask the housekeeper if the 90 taels of silver you owed me before can be paid back today." This was unexpected and made Chuda stunned. 90 taels of silver, I owe you," he repeated it in a low voice. Although he was confused in his heart, he still tried to force a smile on his face. "Master Fan, don't joke. Such a large sum of money, borrowed for so long. How could I joke?" Hong Fan looked serious and looked straight at him. 2.5 years, 30 months, 3 taels per month. Didn't you borrow 90 taels from me?" After this, Chuda suddenly realized what the other party was talking about. But how could he admit it? Not to mention that a few hundred copper coins were still distributed every month. Even the deducted part was not all taken by Chuda alone. As a steward, he certainly knew that once his son entered the Guantong realm, no matter his background, he would have a position in the Hong mansion. But can such a thing without accounts be traced back to the past? It should be noted that there are hundreds of people above the Guantong realm in the Hong mansion, and he is the only steward. Mr. Fan, what you said is a bit unreasonable." Chuda's face turned cold. "If you say that someone borrowed money from you, you must have a promissory note." "I don't have a promissory note," Hong Fan replied. He was obviously stumped by the question, but a smile appeared on his face. "Ridiculous. Without a promissory note, you can also ask for money with empty words," Chuda sneered. "This back courtyard is not a place to beg for money." "What the steward Chu said makes sense," Hong Fan nodded. "But if the 90 taels of monthly allowance that I haven't received were not borrowed by someone, could it be that Chu's housekeeper has embezzled it?" Once these heart-piercing words came out, they were going to bring the things that were under the table to light. Chuda's face darkened, and he glanced at the accountant sitting in the corner of the hall, motioning him to leave quickly. After the people left, he carefully closed the door and turned back to speak. "Master Fan, the monthly allowance is not just my fault, and we can't bring this matter to the table." At this time, there were only 2 people in the room, so Chuda spoke freely. "Master Fan, you don't have to put pressure on me by pretending to be a victim." Chu's side can't be said to be fair and square, but Master Fan will not get the lower grade of 2 agongwen every month, which should be distributed fairly. If the children of the clan know about it, won't there be any criticism? The past cannot be retrieved. Master Fan might as well show mercy and make things convenient for others and yourself. After Chuda finished speaking, he looked at Hong Fan without giving in. But the latter did not respond, and his smile gradually faded. In the dark room, Hong Fan raised his hands. His skin was white, but his palms and fists were all thick and calloused. "Please spare me a hand," he asked softly. "Butler Chu, how precious is this hand?" Chuda was silent for a moment. Hong Fan retracted his hands and continued, "The quality of 2 agong pills varies, of course I know, but in general, the average amount of pills that everyone gets should be of medium quality, so why do we need to exchange them with a monthly allowance? If every 2 agong pill I got in the past 2 years was of high quality, I would never have come here today." Hong Fan shook his head and his eyes fell back on Chuda's face. "Butler Chu is the confidant of the eldest lady, and he should know what kind of life I have been living in the past 2 years. Now that you have seen my hands again, and you can imagine how I earned this Guantong realm with blood and sweat, it must not be difficult. 2.5 years have passed, and it's all in the past, so forget it. But now, I only have time to fight for every minute." Hong Fan said these words calmly. But Chuda really heard something extraordinary in it. To be honest, If he had taken all the 90 taels, he would have paid it back now. But how could he let the miser Chiuda fill the hole for others? Could it be that you, Hong Fan, could find a reason to fight with a family steward like you did with Zhang Yao? Master Fan, please go back. Chiuda choked for a moment, but finally hardened his face. If you really want to make a big deal out of it, Chiuda, I'm just a family servant. I don't have a bright future like Master Fan. It's nothing more than a loss of face, don't mention this again. After he said that, he stepped forward to open the courtyard door and extended his hand to see him off. Hong Fan didn't get angry, but just looked at Chiuda deeply, bowed slightly, and strode out. He didn't think this matter was so easy. There is a saying in the past life that there are two most difficult things in the world. The first is to put your own thoughts into other people's heads, and the second is to put other people's money into your own pocket. It is never easy to take money, let alone the pocket of a miser like Chiuda. The battle with Zhang Yao did bring some fame to Hong Fan and frightened some villains. But it is far from enough to get to the bottom of the matter and trace back to the past. Those who seek superiors must have a broad mind, and those who seek subordinates must show their skills. Kid was so tough, just because he regarded him as a rookie who lacked skills, so he couldn't calculate the pros and cons, but it didn't matter. Hong Fan would help him calculate the pros and cons soon. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28, Red Knight. What was I just talking about? That's right, there are 4 places to go. Beside the stone table in the courtyard, an old man with a kind face and a cloth hat bent 4 fingers and said slowly. The first is the red-robed cavalry, which is always short of people. The second is the steward of the rice shop on West Street, following your Uncle Hong Sheng. The third is to go to the state capital, working with your Uncle Hong Pan. The fourth is to be independent and manage the Himeo village outside the city. This octogenarian is called Hong Shan, who is older than Hong Jian. He is highly respected in the clan and is responsible for personnel. It was the afternoon of the 5th day of the 5th lunar month. Hong Shan came to find Hong Fan to discuss the latter's whereabouts. If you want to be relaxed and comfortable, go to the rice shop and the village, but for a good child like you, it would be a waste of time. The old man drank a cup of tea to moisten his mouth and continued. The first and third ones are definitely the best paid. The basic salary of Zhuai cavalry is 60 taels a year, and there are rewards for meritorious service. Rice, flour and meat are indispensable during the New Year holidays, but it's a bit dangerous. If you go to the prefecture, with your cultivation in the Guantong realm, the basic salary will be at least 80 taels, but I'm afraid you won't be able to go back to Jinhe many times a year. Hong Shan stopped talking for a while, and watched Aunt Liu fill her teacup with satisfaction. Please tell me more about Zhuai cavalry, Grandpa Shan. Hong Fan bowed. Hey, I also guessed that you want to go to Zhuai cavalry. How can a young man not fight hard? Hong Shan grinned, revealing half of his teeth that had fallen out. Our Zhuai cavalry is the most famous elite in Jinhe. Zhuai means Hong. Talking about this, the old man immediately chattered. The number of red-robe cavalry increases and decreases, and now there are 61 of them. To join them, the minimum martial arts cultivation must be Guantong realm. Speaking of which, the existence of this team is also the credit of Jingsha Star Lord. Back then, he defeated the snake people and reversed the situation. We turned from defense to offense, but the court did not provide enough support. Relying on our Jinhe city, how could we supply the consumption of the army? At that time, the Star Lord advocated the use of all the masters above Guantong in the city to enter the snake people's territory to fight and support the war. It was from then on that our red-robe cavalry and Li's Wudan cavalry became arrogant. Hong Shan was old, so he couldn't help nagging when he spoke. But Hong Fan listened carefully, without the impetuosity of a young man, and let the old man talk to his heart's content. At that time, we took back all the supply points in the Jinhe desert, and we also traveled through the snake tribes, traveling back and forth like the wind, making those cold-blooded foreigners scared to death of us. But a few years ago, the Star King got old, and the team disbanded. Like our eldest master or Li Jiahogong, they are also innate masters, but they don't have that prestige after all. Hong Shan shook his head regretfully. Although he didn't say more about this matter, Hong Fan could guess the key point. It's nothing more than this kind of thing of breaking the door. It's still better for people outside the door to lead. Later, our family established as Huai cavalry. Hong Shan drank tea in big gulps and continued. Although the snake people dare not come, there are still many sand bandits in Jinhei, plus the chaos in Huaiyang State in the south, and there are more and more bandit camps in our Liangzhou. So, fanboy, although you are freer on weekdays after joining this Huai cavalry, you will really have to see blood when something happens. With tea, the old man talked for half an hour, drank 2 pots of water, and went to the toilet 4 times. But this only strengthened Hong Fan's plan. Grandpa Shan, I've made up my mind. I'll go to Zhuaiki, he said, drinking the water in the cup. There was no other reason. Among the 4 places, only Zhuaiki could guarantee sufficient time for martial arts training and bring in more money. The old man made it clear that after each mission of Zhuaiki, the participants would either get a reward or share the spoils. As the saying goes, a horse cannot grow fat without night grass, and a man cannot become rich without windfall. Okay, a big family like ours can only rely on children with blood like you to support its bones. Hong Shan slapped the table and gave a thumbs up. I will report this to Xingjie and Master Ming tomorrow, and let you start work as soon as possible. The next day, the 6th day of the 5th month, at 4 p.m. Hong Fan, wearing a white gown and a veil hat, a bamboo hat with a veil on his head, walked into the entrance of Yanliu Lane. Although Yanliu Lane is called a lane, the street is actually quite wide and can accommodate horse carriages. On both sides of the alley, brothels and taverns with red lanterns were lined up one after another. The strong smell of powder emanated from the window lattices, which made the visitors have amorous thoughts. Hong Fan walked in slowly until he saw the 2-story Zhuho Pavilion, which occupied a large area. Then he found a tea stall with a wide view nearby and sat down to wait. Of course, he did not come here for fun, but to block people. After noon today, Chiuda's eldest son came to Zhuho Pavilion to look for his old lover. Of course, the above information costs money. Fortunately, the labor cost in Jinhei City is not high. With the 2 taels of silver gift sent by Chiuda, it is more than enough to buy a few pieces of intelligence and a few helpers to keep an eye on people. Half an hour later, Hong Fan had changed the tea on the stall. Yanliu Lane is a place of fireworks. There are many obscene words and wild words in the alley, and the eyes are unbridled. But Hong Fan did not feel embarrassed. Although he had a high level of education in his previous life, he was not the kind of person who is gentle and noble. When it comes to work, you can't have a feast but can't roll in the mud. Soon, another half an hour passed. At the beginning of the evening, the voices at the door of Zhuho Pavilion rose slightly. It was a middle-aged woman accompanied by 2 men. One of the 2 men was about 30 years old, wearing a brocade robe, with a scattered light in his eyes, and was half drunk. The second man was like an iron tower, full of energy and spirit, wearing an open-fronted vest, revealing a pair of muscular arms. According to the information obtained by Hong Fan, the second man was the guard hired by Chiuda for his eldest son. This seems very strange. The young masters of the main family of the Huang mansion, not only Hong Fan, but even the legitimate son of the 3rd room, Hong'an, have no bodyguards when they play in the city. But Chiuda, who is still a slave, has the financial resources. Master Chiu, don't forget the date you agreed to. If you don't come, Mingai will be sad. The old procuress sent the man out, and kept flattering him. On the 2nd floor, the girl Mingayu, as she called her, also stood by the window, looking at Chiuda with affection. In the brothel, a customer maintenance process that could be used as a teaching plan for future business schools was being performed. Just at this moment, Hong Fan took off his veil and placed it on the table, then stood up and strode. In the middle of Yanliu Lane, he stopped in front of the 2 people. Are you the eldest son of Chiuda's family? Hong Fan asked. Who are you? Chiuda frowned and asked back, supporting his servant. He had long since escaped from slavery and lived in the house purchased by Chiuda. Naturally, he did not know Hong Fan, but felt that the man who blocked his way was too handsome and annoying. On the contrary, the eyes of the madam and Mingayu lit up, and they couldn't help but think in their hearts that if such a young man came to patronize, they should give him a discount. You don't need to know me, Hong Fan said. You just need to pass on a message to your father for me. The tone of these 2 sentences was normal, without any emotion. But it was precisely because of this that Chiuda felt that he was despised. Chapter 29 Colorful Purple. You must know that in Jinhei City, Chiuda, the steward of the Hong family, welcomes and sends off top celebrities, and he himself is also a well-known figure. Chiu Da usually squanders his father's wealth, and he is also wearing the Hong family's tiger skin. He has always been rampant and does not easily suffer injustice. What's more, Miss Mingyu is still watching from behind. Huzi, teach him a lesson, Chiu Da pointed his finger and ordered. The master spoke, and the iron tower-like man immediately pressed forward. This Huzi practiced the shallow martial arts of the Jianghu, and his cultivation level was only the great Zhaoshan of the inner vision realm. But with his natural extraordinary physical strength, he can fight against ordinary Chongmanian warriors. Kid, remember, the person who hit you is called Liang Hu. Huzi glanced at the skinny Hong Fan, stretched out his arm and swung it to slap him. But this slap was blocked. The onlookers looked closely and found that the giant's right wrist was caught in the hand of a young man who was 2 sizes smaller than him. The latter looked as relaxed as if he had caught a chicken in his own chicken cooperative. Liang Hu's iron-like arms were flexed with muscles, and beads of sweat flowed down his forehead. He was in so much pain that he couldn't even speak clearly. I remember, the man who was beaten was called Liang Hu. Hong Fan clenched his right fist, his whole body was like a longbow, and the beauty of power flashed in an instant, and then his fist like a mountain torrent penetrated Liang Hu's lower abdomen. Looking at the muscle lines that appeared under the rolled white cloth clothes when the young man punched, the old procuress and Mingyu seemed to have returned to their youth, and their faces blushed unconsciously. With such a character and appearance, I would be willing to pay $100, several girls in the Zhuhu pavilion thought at the same time. On the other side, Liang Hu suffered the most heavy thing in his life. With one blow, he fell to his knees like a puppet whose strings had been cut, and then he fell to the ground, curling up silently like a baby. Everyone looked at him, and there was only a blank look on his broad face full of flesh, as if he had returned to the purity of his birth, without a trace of viciousness. Chiu Da was half sober at once. My father is from the Hong family, he said in a trembling voice, his whole body shaking like a sieve. I know this, you don't need to tell me, your father is a servant of the Hong family, Hong Fan interrupted. I told you a long time ago that I came to you just to ask you to pass a message to Chiu Da, but you insisted on making trouble. He stepped over Liang Hu and whispered in Chiu Da's ear. Tell your father to pay me back the 120 taels of silver he owes me as soon as possible. He knows who I am. Chiu Da nodded repeatedly when he heard this, and he didn't dare to ask any more questions. Seeing this, Hong Fan patted his shoulder, took back his veil and left in a leisurely manner under the disappointed eyes of the girls. The 7th day of May was surprisingly peaceful. Hong Fan practiced in the small courtyard for a day, but he did not receive the 120 taels of silver, nor did he wait for anyone to come to his door to question him. The sun rose and the moon set, and it was already the morning of the 8th day of the first lunar month. Hong Fan finished his morning lessons in the shade of the locust tree and put on the veil hat hanging on the side. So, Chu Guangjia, do you have a longer reaction arc, or have you made a misjudgment? Do you think I dare not do anything to your sons? He muttered to himself, said hello to Aunt Liu, and left the yard. Half an hour later, in the courtyard alley in the south of the city, Hong Fan took off his veil hat and stepped over the threshold, and was hit in the face by a burst of excitement. The next ones to start the competition, are Chu Erlang's General Ben Lanzi and Lu Killen's strongman Song Bronze. A thin old man whistled in a voice as loud as gold and stone. In the courtyard, a long wooden table was surrounded by many people. Hong Fan squeezed in with force and saw the general and the strong man. There were 2 big crickets, one purple and one green. The prize for the winner of this game is 2,000 yuan. If you want to get rich, please place your bets. The old man glanced at the unfamiliar faces that squeezed in, but didn't care. He just followed the procedure. With the referee's click command, the crickets were guided by the stick to bite each other. The fight in the wooden box started, and the air in the room was tense. During the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the onlookers either frowned and clenched their fists, or cheered, completely forgetting themselves. As for those who had placed bets, or Chiu and Lu Qi who were already in the game, their veins were bulging and their teeth were clenched. When the old man said the last Tang Brown standing basin, dead, colorful purple wins all, the tense atmosphere dissipated in the thunderous applause, and the old and young at the table came back to their senses. Chu Erlan carefully took the cricket back and took a bet of 2,000 yuan from Lu Qi. He was even more excited. He felt that he was going to fight in the gambling house again. But just as he stepped out of the door, A slender and strong arm grabbed his shoulder and took him to the side. Your cricket is good. It can be worth a lot of money, right? Chiu frowned and turned around, and saw a young man with a veil on his back. He was a little younger than himself and had an incredibly handsome appearance. Chiu was stunned at first, and then his face turned pale immediately. Not bad. Are you, Master Hong Fan? He asked in a low voice with a fake smile. It seems that your elder brother has passed on a message for me. Hong Fan nodded and glanced at the strong man following Chiu. This man was Chiu's regular attendant for his second son, and he also had some skills. But thinking of Liang who was carried back yesterday, how could this guy dare to move? There are too many people around. Let's go to the next alley to talk, Hong Fan said, exerting force on his hands and leading Chiu into a dead-end alley in the corner of the alley without any explanation. Although it was noon, the alley with high walls was very dark, as if it was isolated from the world. Chiu, let's not beat around the bush. I'm here to collect debts from you. Hong Fan leaned against the wall, blocking the entrance to the alley. You know that your father owes me money, right? He asked with his arms folded. Chiu shook his head instinctively. He thought to himself that my father has always been about making money. How could he owe money? But when he saw the jade-faced demon god frowning, he had to nod again. Alice, you can tell from my face that I am a timid and peaceful person. Hong Fan sighed and looked worried. But your father is the housekeeper of the mansion. He owes me money and won't pay me back. I really have no choice. That's why I was forced to come to you. You can understand, right? Chiu held the cricket cage and thought to himself that I didn't understand, but he nodded repeatedly. By the way, how was the injury of Liang Hu yesterday? Hong Fan asked with concern. Huzi received your advice, and he couldn't get out of bed this morning, Chiu replied, shuddering. He didn't know that Liang Hu could be so harmless before last night. Advice? The wording is quite exquisite. Did you go to private school like your third brother? Hong Fan smiled. I went to private school for a few days, but I was dull and didn't learn anything. Chiu smiled apologetically. Okay, that's enough greetings. I came to you today to ask you to pass on a message to your father, Hong Fan said. I will definitely pass it on, you say? Chiu smiled flatteringly. No need to say it this time. My words can only be understood, not expressed in words. Hong Fan grinned and bounced up from the brick wall. Chiu's smile was forced. He was a smart man. He knew that he didn't need to use his mouth, so he must have used his hands. P.S. I have been having trouble digesting food recently. I always have insufficient gastric motility and bloating. Is there any way to solve this problem? Chapter 30 Money Comes. Master Fan, punishing a rotten person like me will dirty your hands, Chiu bowed and begged, glancing at his servant. But how could the latter dare to come up and take the blame? Your surname is Chiu and you are my master, then the surname Hong is not my master's master. You worry too much? Hong Fan shook his head solemnly. I just crawled out of the quagmire, how can I dirty my hands? As he said this, he clenched his fist at his waist, stepped forward and punched Chiu in the lower abdomen with a spinning wrist, watching him kneel down in front of him silently. Oh, no, there's still something to be said. After knocking Chiu down, Hong Fan suddenly turned his eyes to the servant. Go back and tell Chiu that this time it is not 120 taels, but 150 taels. I heard that the third son of the Chiu family studies hard and is a serious child. I don't want to go to him either. Seeing the servant nodding repeatedly, Hong Fan put on his veil and turned out of the alley, disappearing into the light. Then, just when the former thought he had escaped and was helping his second son up, Hong Fan turned back. Master, Bandang called out with a pale face, but he ignored him and just picked up the bamboo basket containing the colorful purple. Then, he disappeared into the light for the second time. Jinhei City, that night. The Chiu family's courtyard has 3 entrances and exits, and it is considered a wealthy family in the city. After working hard for most of his life, Chiu has saved up 2,000 to 3,000 taels of silver, which is more than many small and medium-sized landlords. Counting the gray income from the position of housekeeper, as well as the monthly salary of him and his wife, the Chiu family can have a net income of more than 300 taels a year. It is precisely because of this that the housekeeper Chiu can afford to support a fierce servant like Liang Hu. It was not late at night, and it was time for dinner. Today, Chiu, who usually lives in the Hong mansion, rarely returned home for dinner, but the atmosphere in the dining room was gloomy. Hong Fan, Chiu swallowed a piece of smoked meat that he didn't know the taste of, and sighed. I thought I didn't underestimate you, but I did. In the past 2 days, he carefully learned about the battle between Zhang Yao and Zhang Yao, especially the words and styles of the two men. Combined with the experiences of his two sons, he had a general idea of Hong Fan in his mind. Let's end this matter here. I will give him the money tomorrow. Chuda put down his chopsticks and made up his mind. How can this be? Chuda's wife, who had also lived in Hong's house for most of her life, stopped sobbing and said angrily. Erlang and Liang, who are still lying in the room, and this matter is just over, she slammed the table fiercely, showing the spirit of a shrew. Of his 90 taels of monthly salary, we only get 30% at most. Besides, he's asking for 150 taels now, so we have to pay 120 taels. Chuda didn't argue with his wife when she was furious, but just straightened his back and looked at her indifferently. Soon, the old woman shrank back and started to cry. I've come to this position over the years and have seen too many people. Chuda retracted his gaze and said, I'm not afraid of those who are highly skilled in martial arts and respectable. For example, the masters of the top families in Jinhe. They don't easily attack the people below them. I'm not afraid of those who are low in martial arts and cruel. For example, those street hooligans in Bicheng, Liang, who can deal with them with a knife on his back. But I'm afraid of people like Hong Fan who are clear-headed and capable. He is in the Guantong realm. We can't beat him. He said he would go to find the third brother. So he really will go? 2.5 years. Hong Fan pretended to be a waste for 2.5 years. The more tolerant people are, the more grudges they hold. At this point, Chuda felt a little scared. It's not that he hasn't read about people who pretend to be crazy and stupid for years in storybooks, but this is the first time he has seen it in reality. Let's not talk about how much progress he can make in martial arts in the future. Even if he can't enter the Hunren realm in his life, he is not someone who can be offended. As he spoke, his determination became clearer. At this time, Chuda suddenly interrupted. Dad, what's wrong with being in the Guantong realm? He's only a decent cultivator. Let alone a sneak attack. 5 or 6 good men skilled in swords and bows can still surround and kill him head-on. He lost face in front of his old lover 2 days ago, and he was very angry. I heard from people on the road that buying the life of a person who has just entered the Guantong realm only costs 100 taels of silver. Before Chu Dalin finished speaking, he saw his father stand up and come over, reaching out to give him a crisp blow. I spent so much money to raise a stupid pig like you, Chuda cursed, his face flushed red. You want to hire people to surround and kill your father, master? Do you think you can escape the wise eyes of the eldest master, or the search of the officials under the command of Master Wu? After asking these 2 questions, he still felt unsatisfied, and turned around and kicked his eldest son twice. Okay, this matter is settled. Don't say a word outside, and don't let the third son know. Chuda swept his wife and children with a majestic look. Tomorrow, I will personally deliver the silver to him, and add a little more to the amount he asked. Let's just say 200 taels. Although he said it firmly, he still felt a tightness in his chest when he thought of the white silver. 200 taels, well, 200 taels, this is the money to buy Anshen. For such a ruthless person, I have to spend it. Chuda returned to his seat with his hand on the round table, while holding his chest and talking to himself. His expression was so grim that he was so sad. On the 9th day of May, the weather was bright. Hong Fan went out early in the morning, first sold the not bad Ben Lanzi general in Shanjing Hutuang for a small amount of silver, and then went out of the city. Throughout the day, he repeatedly practiced his sand control ability in the mountains until he was exhausted several times. In view of the current state of the sand world, Hong Fan tried to develop 2 killer moves, Sand Thorn Projection and Sand Fog, but in the end, due to the limitation of his cultivation, he could not fully exert his skills. Fortunately, he was used to this kind of periodic failure when he was an engineer in his previous life. At the beginning of the evening, 5 o'clock in the evening, Hong Fan rushed back to the small courtyard before dark. He pushed the gate of the courtyard casually, but it didn't move at all. The gate of the courtyard, which was usually unlocked during the day, was bolted today. Before Hong Fan could speak, Aunt Liu's vigilant questioning sounded in the courtyard. Is the young master back? It's me, Hong Fan replied, and then the door was opened and let in. And, what's wrong today? He asked with a smile when he entered the courtyard, and he had guessed it in his mind. I asked the housekeeper to send silver, Aunt Liu replied in a breath, looked around the courtyard, and quickly bolted the door again. He is a sensible person who can be a housekeeper. Hong Fan laughed softly, scooped a ladle of water from the jar and drank it, and went into the inner room to sit down. Before he could take the initiative to speak, Aunt Liu quickly dug out a cloth bag from under the firewood pile in the corner of the side room and carefully brought it over. "Master, I asked the butler to come over this afternoon and give me this saddlebag to repay you," she said hesitantly. "I wanted to ask him in detail, but he just said that I would know when you come back." Hong Fan nodded and opened the saddlebag on the table, revealing 40 silver ingots weighing 5 taels. Oh, even though she had counted them several times in the afternoon, Aunt Liu couldn't help but be surprised. She rushed to the door and bolted it. P.S. Investment, tickets, and follow-up reading. The new book period is quite critical, and readers are welcome to help. Chapter 31 Traffic Hall. Young master, the housekeeper said that we are paying him back, but how could we have borrowed money from him? She asked in a very low voice, as if the wall could hear someone. Not all of it was borrowed by him. Hong Fan picked up a silver ingot and weighed it, and said with a smile, "There are monthly payments owed for 2.5 years in here, and the rest is his gift to me. Don't worry, Auntie, he took the initiative to give me money. How could I blackmail him?" Hearing what the young master said, Auntie Liu felt that it made sense and felt relieved. "A few days ago, I went to visit the back courtyard, and the housekeeper and I hit it off at first sight." Hong Fan put down the silver and made up a story. "This gift is a bit heavy, but it can't show his friendship with me. Yes, the young master is a handsome man, and he will definitely be of great use to the clan in the future. It's reasonable to ask the housekeeper to curry favor with him." Auntie Liu easily figured it out after hearing this. She looked at her young master, and naturally she was flattering him, thinking that there was nothing better than him. In the dim light from the window, Hong Fan counted the silver twice and confirmed that it was 200 taels, 50 taels more than what he asked for. This surprised him a little. But with this extra 50 taels, Hong Fan would not be able to use Chiuda as a scapegoat if he was short of money in the future. On the other hand, Aunt Liu had put aside her old worries, but now she had a new one. How should she spend this huge sum of money? With 200 taels of silver, she could buy 25 acres of good land in Jinhei City, with each acre costing 8 taels. If these fields were rented out, 1 acre could earn 2 stone of grain rent a year. Adding it all together, in a good year, there would be an income of 25 taels, and in a bad year, there would always be at least 20 taels. This is a fortune that can be passed down to the family. "Why don't we use this money to buy good land in the southeast of the city?" Aunt Liu proposed halfway, but saw her young master waving his hand. "And this money came from martial arts, and it should be returned to martial arts," Hong Fan said, tying up the unrolled sack again. "The world is in turmoil, and martial arts are more valuable than any silver or land." Aunt Liu was startled when she heard this, and then she nodded heavily when she thought of the difference between the recent days and the past. May 11th, noon. Under the bright sunshine, Hong Fan left the Hong mansion with a saddlebag full of all his belongings on his back. After turning a few blocks, he turned into Chisha Avenue and stepped into the most prosperous trading area in Jinhei City. Here, the shouts of vendors, the chatter of passers-by, and even the sound of flags fluttering in the wind are mixed together. Walking on the street, it seems to be stepping on the pulse of the world. In the center of Chisha Avenue, the largest high-end business in the city, Jia Atong Tang, is located here. This is also Hong Fan's destination. There are usually only 2 sources of martial arts resources. One is the natural treasures or blood and flesh of exotic beasts grown in the wild, and the other is the elixir made from various precious medicinal materials according to secret recipes. For most low-level martial artists, both are equally rare. In Jinhei City, apart from the Zhangwu Academy, only the Hong, Li, and Shi families have their own unique secret recipes, and most of the elixirs they make are supplied to the clan. Only a few shops with very strong backgrounds can regularly put some martial arts resources on the shelves for sale. Under the watchful eyes of the guards at the door, Hong Fan walked into the store calmly. The Jiatong Hall is divided into 3 floors, and the area of each floor is about 300 to 400 square meters. Its furnishings are all mahogany with dark lacquer, and various samples are supported by gold silk on top. Hong Fan only took a glance and saw more than 10 guards stationed in various places. Judging from their reactions, the leading ones obviously have the cultivation of Guatong realm. Behind the counter, several idle waitresses saw the guests coming in and wanted to greet them. The light red martial arts uniforms are generally only worn by the children of the Hong family as daily wear, and the appearance and demeanor of the visitors are particularly outstanding. In the end, The one who was obviously in a higher position used his eyes to force the others to retreat and took the business. The waitress welcomed Hong Fan to the side of the store and sat him down. She bowed respectfully and served him tea. Then she stood and asked softly, "Welcome to Jiatong Hall, my name is Yiming. What do you need?" Hong Fan was not surprised by such a good service attitude. After all, anyone with a little insight could see what was in his bag. "I want to purchase some cultivation resources that can be used in Guangdong. The budget is around 200 taels, and the price should be moderate," he said directly. Unlike other private channels, Jiatong Hall's business is known for its compliance with rules in Jinhe. "I understand," Yiming nodded, and after a little thought, she turned back and took out 7 wooden boxes. The first box was opened, and inside was a round and smooth black pill with a fresh fragrance and excellent quality. "2 Agong pills, you don't need to introduce this," Hong Fan nodded. He turned his eyes to the second box, which contained a piece of ochre incense, which smelled fragrant. "Your family's 2 Agong pills can replenish the essence and qi, especially for impacting acupuncture points, and this Yingxuxiang is made by the Li family, which can calm the mind and activate the blood, and is a perfect match for 2 Agong pills." Yiming confirmed the family background of the guest and became more friendly. The third box contains the Qi family's Juki pills, which have slightly different effects. They cannot increase the effect of cultivation, but can replenish the exhausted true qi in an instant. She introduced the ivory white pills in the third box. With it, the daily cultivation time can be greatly extended, so it has the same effect. Hong Fan nodded and understood immediately. This is similar to the high-tech recovery technology of the Olympic teams of major countries in the past, which allows athletes to squeeze out more rest time for training. The fourth box contains the dried meat of the alien beast Zaochi. After eating, it can replenish blood and qi in large quantities, and it has an effect on both body and horizontal training. The fifth box, the sixth, the seventh. After a while, Yiming introduced the functions and prices of the 7 resources, and there was nothing outrageously expensive. In fact, Jinhe City is located in a remote area, and it is difficult for high-level resources to flow here. Hong Fan nodded in thanks, thinking silently in his heart. The high-quality 2 Agong pills cost 3 taels each, and the ordinary ones cost 2 taels. The former can last for half a month, but considering the double energy consumption of the Dragon Soul Tree and the Sand World, it can only last for 7 or 8 days in Hong Fan's place. With his 200 taels of silver, he can buy enough for 500 days. But Hong Fan doesn't want durability, but efficiency. Now he has just entered the Guangdong realm, and he has easily obtained so much income. As long as his strength is steadily improved, he will join the Red Cloth Cavalry in the future and open up some ways, and the money will only come faster. "Let's do this. I want 24 2 Agong pills, 30 sections of Yingxuxiang, and 20 caddies of Zaochi jerky," Hong Fan said after calculating according to the marked price. These 3 resources can be used together to maximize efficiency, and the total price is exactly 200 taels, which is enough for 6 months. Just when Yiming finalized the order and went back to prepare the goods, a uniform greeting came from the entrance of the transportation hall. "Miss." Hong Fan looked in the direction of the voice and saw a young girl walking in accompanied by a maid. The woman was wearing a green skirt and light makeup, and her appearance and figure were comparable to those of a celebrity supermodel in her previous life. However, what impressed Hong Fan the most was that she always kept her chin slightly raised when she walked, like a swan that had just changed into white feathers, revealing an unconcealable pride. P.S. The per acre yield data refers to the paper a study on the per acre yield of rice in the Tehu Lake area during the Song, Ming and Qing dynasties. The paper calculated the average per acre yield of the Tehu Lake basin in the Tang, Song, Ming and Qing dynasties. 138 kilograms per acre in the Tang dynasty. 225 kilograms per acre in the Song dynasty. 333 kilograms per acre in the Ming dynasty. In the article, Dahua has martial arts black technology, and the average physical fitness and lifespan of the people have increased. So although Jinhe City is a frontier, it is probably not excessive to refer to the average per acre yield data of Tehu Lake in the Song dynasty for the per acre yield of Shangshan. Anyway, it's just a setting, so don't delve into it. Chapter 32 Echo. Before Hong Fan came, he knew that Jiatong Hall was the property of Zhang Zhen, the defender of Jinhe City. It was also because of this that this place could occupy the central position of Chisha Avenue and obtain the quota of elixirs from the 3 major tyrants of Jinhe. So even though he had never met her, He could guess the identity of this beautiful girl. Zhang Hun's only daughter Zhang Fuqiu. On the other side, the daughter of the Zhang family habitually glanced at the customers in the store. Her eyes fell on Hong Fan for a moment, and then turned to go upstairs. Lian Huo, the man downstairs just now, is that Hong Fan who challenged me to a fight on Inning Street last time? When they reached the second floor, Zhang Fuqiu suddenly stopped and asked the maid. Yes, it's him, Lian Huo replied with certainty. Her memory is not very good. After 10 days, she may not be able to remember the faces of ordinary people she has seen. But with Hong Fan's outstanding appearance, she can't forget him even if she wants to. I have heard people mention him these days, saying that he has an above-average talent, and he might be able to enter the realm of perfection in the future. Zhang Fuqiu took another step, raised her eyebrows slightly, but said in a disapproving tone. But no matter what, since he is brother Sheng's younger brother, I should not be stingy with my advice. She walked to the inner room and sat down, stretched out her finger and tapped his cheek. How about this? You go down and tell him to give him a 10% discount on whatever he buys. As soon as the words came out of her mouth, the girl added another sentence as if she would not admit defeat. Also, tell him to practice Yanliu Gong well, since he has some talent. Don't waste time on boxing and kicking. Lian Now, what do you think? Zhang Fuqiu asked. I think it's great, the maid replied. The young lady will get married in the future, and there are only 3 or 4 people in Jinhei City who can be considered. In my opinion, Master Sheng is the best, so it is of course a good thing for the young lady to take care of his half-brother, Lian Now said happily, with a mischievous smile on her face. You are the only one who talks nonsense. Zhang Fuqiu glanced at her and scolded her, but she obviously meant the same thing in her heart. Lian Now turned and went downstairs, and walked straight to Hong Fan. But Mr. Fan of the Hong family is here in person, she asked a question in a statement tone. It's me, Hong Fan replied, sitting down on the chair. My young lady is on good terms with Mr. Fan's brother, Mr. Sheng, so we have told him that all Mr. Fan's orders today will be discounted by 10%, Lian Now said lightly. Thank you very much for your kindness, young lady. Upon hearing this, Hong Fan immediately stood up and bowed slightly in return. At this time, the little maid, who was about 13 or 14 years old, smiled a little more. In addition, the young lady has another word for the young master. Lian Now accepted the bow calmly and said, since the young master has a talent for martial arts, he should focus on the body and should not waste time on boxing and kicking. Hong Fan didn't understand what was going on, and just felt that this statement was a bit unreasonable. But he still nodded and said, thank Miss Zhang for me. If it were an ordinary young man who had gained power overnight, he might be resentful, thinking that we didn't know each other. So what right do you have to point fingers? But Hong Fan is no longer this age. He saved 20 taels of silver, so even if someone came to scold him, he would only think it was worth it. Seeing this, the maid nodded and turned to go upstairs. Not long after, the maid brought the packaged elixir and dried meat over, and also returned an extra silver note of 20 taels. With this money saved, Hong Fan can have a lot more surplus for his daily consumption. He picked up his things and ate the cheese snacks on the small table in a few bites, and strode out of the door. It was close to noon, and there were fewer pedestrians in Jinhei City, and more smoke from cooking. In an alley leading to Hong's house, children used branches to divide squares on the ground and shouted and played hopscotch. Its form and gameplay are similar to those in the previous life. Hong Fan stopped and looked at them for a long time, as if he was listening to the echo of his childhood across a world. After a long time, he turned out of the alley and stepped into the sunny avenue again, his heart calm and steady. 3 days later, May 14th. At night, the moonlight like water flowed through the gaps between the branches and shrubs, causing frogs by the canal and insects in the grass to make a fuss and make a lot of noise. Hong Fan bolted the door, gathered heat between his fingers to ignite the blood to incense, and took a small piece of Zaochi dried meat and held it in his mouth. When he sat upright on the bed and smelled the rich aroma, he put the dried meat in his mouth and chewed it hard. After the first few bites, Zaochi meat was like a stone, hard and tasteless. But as the meat fibers were crushed by the molars, saliva seeped in, and a slightly fishy sweetness spread between his lips and teeth. Swallowing the minced meat, Hong Fan felt like drinking a mouthful of strong liquor, with a burning sensation along the esophagus to the stomach. Then, the blood and qi, which were already fully activated by the Tuaguang pill, became even more fiery and excited. With the power of the three martial arts resources, Hong Fan cleared his mind and guided the Yanliu Qi to circulate and impact the acupuncture points again and again. Time passed by, and it was not until the second half of the night that he felt exhausted and could not continue. At this point, the third major acupoint choose of the Hanjuan pericardium meridian had been loosened for the most part. After practicing for a few days, Hong Fan had a rough assessment of the current progress speed. It takes about 2 months to open up a complete meridian. This speed is about 30% to 40% faster than when there was only 2 Aguang pill, and it is almost 4 times faster than the original owner before the time travel. Assuming there is no external help, with the qualifications of this body, it will take 6 to 8 months to open up a meridian. Hong Fan thought, it is indeed an above-average qualification. It takes only 10 years to master the 12 sutras in the realm of penetration. It seems that entering the realm of unity before the age of 30 is a matter of routine. But Hong Fan knows that reality and paper potential are always two different things. Just like in previous games such as Dota and LoL, practicing martial arts also requires a snowball, the same equipment and economy, 3 minutes difference in hand, completely different control over the situation. The faster the breakthrough, the more resources can be gathered, and the more sufficient practice time can be guaranteed. If everything related to internal injuries and sudden death had not happened, the original Hong Fan would probably leave the clan school sadly, and then be deeply trapped in the vortex of daily life, running endlessly for food, clothing, housing and transportation. At that time, he could not even guarantee the length of martial arts practice every day, let alone 8 months, and he might not be able to master a sutra in a year and a half. Over time, the progress was slow, and it was inevitable that he lost his spirit, and he felt that he was not the material for martial arts. Thousands of troops crossing a single plank bridge are slow at every step. Because of this, when facing Kingu that day, Hong Fan had the word seize the day and night. One night passed, and it was May 15th. Hong Fan had just finished breakfast when he waited for a white-haired guest with a cane. Hong Shan, who was in charge of personnel and sundries in the clan. Brother Fan, I came here this time because I have some bad news. Hong Shan sat down at the stone table and said, last time you said you were going to Zhuaiki. I also thought it was a sure thing. The old man was a little embarrassed and didn't even touch the tea made by Aunt Liu. But I went to confirm it again yesterday, but they didn't say anything. Hearing this, Hong Fan paused slightly with his hand holding the teacup. Is there anything special? He drank the tea in one gulp and asked. P.S. There has not been a single post criticizing this book so far, which shows that my level has improved compared to the beginning of the last book. I am quite happy. Chapter 33 Victory Day. Well, maybe the red-robed cavalry is not absent, Hong Shan speculated. After he finished speaking, the old man shook his head, as if he thought it was too ridiculous. How could a family armed force of dozens of people be absent? Hong Fan nodded silently, and did not ask directly. Instead, he went back to the inner room, took out a cake of tea, and handed it to Hong Shan with both hands. Grandpa Shan, you have been very tired recently for my affairs. This cake of Portion non Zhi has been aged for 7 years. Please accept it, Grandpa Shan. He said it quite calmly, without showing any emotion, let alone flattery, but his expression was very sincere. Hong Shan didn't want to accept it at first, but the old man had nothing else to like except tea, and seeing Hong Fan's insistence, he finally accepted it. Because of this, the matter was not settled, but he scratched his beard, and he had to say something anyway. In fact, for your matter, I met with Master Xing and Master Ming twice. Hong Shan's voice lowered, and Aunt Liu had already avoided the inner room. The young Master Xing he mentioned was Hong Xing, the nominal head of Zhuaiki. Of course, Hong Xing's main task now is to practice, so he rarely shows up in actual management. The full name of Master Ming is Hong Ming. According to the family tree, he is of the same generation as Hong Jian. He is Hong Fan's distant cousin and the real manager of Zhuaiki. Master Ming certainly has no opinion. It's Master Xing who can't give a reply, Hong Shan continued. But after chatting with Master Xing, I privately feel that he likes you, Brother Fan. Maybe he got the opinions of others, so it's not easy to make a decision. After the old man finished speaking, he seemed to be relieved, and then he picked up the teacup and drank the half-cold tea. Grandpa Shan, I understand, Hong Fan nodded in reply. He guessed with his toes that it was probably the eldest lady who was playing tricks again. As the actual third master in the family, Hong Li is old, and the eldest son, Hong Sheng, can't be influenced by anyone except 2 or 3 people. Among them, Hong Jian, the clan leader, and Hong Wu, the judge of Jinhe City, had no reason to find trouble with Hong Fan. So it could only be Hong Chen. As for the eldest lady's idea, it was also easy to guess. Zuyiki was equivalent to the Huangpu Military Academy and the guards of the Hong family. If Hong Fan went in for 2 or 3 years to train, not to mention martial arts training, at least his connections and status would be consolidated. By then, even if the eldest lady had the final say in the backhouse, it would be difficult for her to exert influence on him. Anyway, I will help you take care of this matter. If Zuyiki doesn't work, I will definitely be able to find a place for the other places. After saying all the words, Hong Shang left a promise, put the cake of poor in his pocket and left on crutches. Hong Fan saw him out, and then sat back at the table thinking. In his opinion, Hong Chen's ridiculous obstruction was not difficult to solve. Just thinking about it casually, there were at least 3 or 4 ways. However, most of these methods required finding someone to smooth things over, owing favors, and it was difficult to eliminate future troubles. At this time, Aunt Liu put the cloth bag with money in her pocket and planned to go out. "What are you going to do, Aunt?" Hong Fan asked. "In a few days it will be the Victory Festival. As usual, I have to find a tailor to make a new set of clothes for the young master," Aunt Liu replied with a smile. Hong Fan was moved when he heard this. He might be able to get some help on this Victory Festival. May 18th, Victory Festival. The population of Dahua exceeds 10 million, and most of them don't know about this festival. The original festival was to celebrate the military victory of Jinhe City over the Snake people, so the celebration was limited to a few small cities in the west of Liangzhou. However, after years of changes, the current Victory Festival has become a festival to bless the younger generation. On this day, the children of all families in Jinhe will gather together, and the elders will give encouragement. At 4 p.m., more than 100 children of the Hong family in their teens and 20s gathered in Mingshan Hall, the largest hall in the Hong mansion, and more than a dozen tables of cold dishes were prepared for the banquet. In the empty square of the mansion, a troupe of actors were singing majestic tunes. After Hong Fan arrived, he naturally sat down at Hong Fu's table. It's interesting to say that he didn't have any friendship with his classmates when they went to school together. But after more than 10 days of separation, they met again and felt unprecedented warmth. Not long after, when everyone sat down in turn, Mingshan Hall gradually became quiet for no reason. After a while, a steady sound of footsteps gradually came from the back door of the main hall. The man who came out was a middle-aged man with a square face and a strong body. He was wearing a vermilion robe, a wide belt inlaid with jade, and stood in the hall with his hands behind his back. Everyone looked at him, and their mouths were dry unconsciously, as if they were looking at a burning flame. He is Hong Jian, the head of the Hong family, a congenital warrior, and a hereditary National Guard. Hong Fan thought, he is also the biological father of this body. The clan leader is here. All the disciples stand up and salute. Hong Sheng stood up and ordered at the first table in the middle. Everyone stood up and saluted. No need to be polite. Hong Jian pressed his hands and spoke. His voice was extremely rough, as if dehydrated gravel was rubbing against each other. It's rare that all the disciples are here today, so I'll say a few words. Hong Jian's eyes swept over the crowd. Without accumulating small steps, one cannot reach 1,000 miles. Without accumulating small streams, one cannot form a river or sea. I hope you will be down to earth and stick to your original intentions. This will comfort you in your life. Okay, let's start the meal. After saying a few words that lacked emotion and could even be said to be bland, Hong Jian turned and left. It was more of a perfunctory than a blessing. Then, Mingshan Hall really became lively. As one of the most important festivals in Jinhe City, today's banquet had a rich variety of dishes, and more importantly, everyone was allowed to drink. Congratulations, congratulations. If there is no Dukang, what's the point of congratulating? At Hong Fan's table, everyone was toasting and talking non-stop. As the only person at the table who had reached the Guanchong realm, Hong Fan received many compliments, which he rarely received. He also raised his glass to respond. Hong Ping, who had always considered himself to be of a different status, was also infected and took the initiative to talk to him. Hong Fan, you don't have to go to school now, but you can live a comfortable life. Hong Fan just smiled and ate the food without replying. Hong Ping thought that the other party didn't hear him, and said again, Hong Fan, but at this time, Hong Fan took the wine glass and took Hong Fu to Hong Sheng's table to toast. Hong Ping's face immediately turned ugly. A banquet passed in the midst of excitement. The last part of the celebration of the victory festival was that an elder, as a representative, gave a message and a gift to each child. This was also the second expectation of everyone today. Although the message was mostly polite, the gift was real money. The general amount ranged from half a tael to 1 tael of silver, enough to go to Yanliu Lane for a leisurely 1 or 2 times. As in previous years, the responsibility of giving gifts was borne by the eldest lady. Brother Zhang, I heard from Uncle Sheng that you have made more progress this year than last year, but you still need to keep working hard. She sat at the main seat and handed a red brocade bag to a young man in his 20s. The latter thanked her profusely. The process went by quickly, and soon it was the turn of the 17 and 18-year-olds who were still in the clan school. Chapter 34 Eastwind. Brother Qing, last time I talked with Master Li, he said that you have improved your cultivation and are only a few months away from mastering the first true meridian, the eldest lady said with a pleasant face. To be honest, being able to recognize hundreds of young people in the clan and tell their current situation, at least from the perspective of managing the inner house, Hong Fan felt that the Huangchen family was still very competent. Brother Qing, this is your share, she said and handed over the brocade bag. Thank you, eldest lady. As one of the 6 Chongmei faces of the clan school, Hong Qing, a concubine, was particularly humble. Qing will never forget the kindness of the eldest lady in cultivating me. If I succeed in martial arts in the future, I am willing to follow Brother Sheng and help me lead the horse and fall the stirrups. In Hong Fan's opinion, Hong Qing's words were a bit disparaging. But most people didn't think it was wrong. The difference between legitimate and illegitimate children, plus the difference in talent, Dahua has never been a place where everyone is equal. Next is Hong Fan. Brother Fan, you had a hard time in the past, which was my negligence. Seeing Hong Fan coming up to pay his respects, the eldest lady's smile not only did not cool, but became even brighter. Fortunately, you have a promising future. I heard that the conflict between you and the Zhang family has been resolved. I feel relieved. This is for you. I hope you can practice martial arts well and be more capable in the future to assist your brother Sheng, Hong Chen said warmly, as if this was her true intention. Hong Fan certainly would not take it seriously and bowed his hands in response. After taking the brocade bag, he caught a glimpse of Hong Ping, who was standing behind him, suddenly taking a step forward. This was expected. In the memory inherited by Hong Fan, Hong Ping occupied a lot of space. This guy had the highest status in the clan school and was the best at bullying others. Even if he was unreasonable at other times, Hong Ping would still make a fuss. Moreover, today he felt that it was Hong Fan who humiliated him first. Hong Fan, is it all over with just a bow? He asked with a sarcastic tone. My brother is a top figure in Jinhei City, so you have to say something nice to him. Although this was said to Hong Fan, Hong Qing, who was standing next to him, seemed to have been stabbed in the back, and his face suddenly darkened. The eldest lady frowned and was about to scold her youngest son. But Hong Fan spoke loudly before he could. Brother Ping, I'm afraid you don't know that Master Sheng is not only your brother, but also my brother. He turned around and stared at Hong Ping's face with a pair of eyes that were as thick as ink. And, I am also your brother. The latter was stared at in public like this, and his anger grew. Not everyone can be my brother, Hong Ping sneered and fought back. He was speaking from his heart. As the youngest son of the legitimate wife, Hong Fan, who was born out of wedlock, was at most a nominal brother. In terms of status, the two have always been very different. But it was this sentence that gave the other party an opportunity. Hong Fan did not get angry, but turned around and looked at Hong Sheng. Brother Ping and I often fought in the clan school, and he may be angry with me. After all, he is still young. And it doesn't matter whether he recognizes me as his illegitimate brother or not. When things developed to this point, the eldest lady's heart skipped a beat and felt that it was not good. But as soon as Hong Fan said this, he was full of momentum, so how could she interrupt? Brother Dansheng has always been Hong Fan's role model and the future helmsman of the Hong family, but I don't know, does your brother recognize me as his younger brother? Hong Fan stood up and bowed his hands to ask, and Ming Hall was silent for a moment. Dozens or hundreds of eyes looked at Hong Sheng, especially many illegitimate children, whose eyes were particularly serious. At this time, even if they were confused, they instinctively felt that the atmosphere was solemn and did not dare to speak easily. Does Hong Fan mean that he only cares about his brother and deliberately despises me? Hong Ping turned his heart and thought. But in the same situation, Hong Sheng's perception was completely different. As the successor that the family strongly advocated to cultivate, he was politically sensitive and knew that Hong Fan's question, no matter what his original intention was no longer a question for one person. In front of everyone, his answer would represent his attitude towards managing the family, and there must be no ambiguity. It is my fault that my brother asked this question, Hong Sheng first bowed to Hong Fan and replied. Then, his second sentence was suddenly sharp and was directed at Huang Ping. It is even more my fault that my brother said such heartless and unrighteous words. Hong Ping, you go to the ancestral hall now and kneel until tomorrow morning, and then copy the Hong family precepts 100 times and give them to me in 3 days. The situation took a sharp turn for the worse, but Hong Ping was still in a half-dazed state. He had always been loved and indulged by his mother and brother, and suddenly he was punished so severely. How could he accept it? But when Hong Ping looked at Hong Sheng with a wrong and resistant look, he only got a doubled serious and cold stare. How could this devil who was good at the clan school know that he was not facing his brother at this time, but the future patriarch of the Hong family, who was ambitious and wanted to win the hearts of the people? Brother, I know. After a brief eye contact, Hong Ping was defeated. He didn't even take the brocade bag, and he went straight to the ancestral hall with his head down. As the initiator of everything, Hong Fan knew that there would be no obstacles for him to join the Red Robe Cavalry. 3 days later, May 21st, afternoon. Hong Family Military Merit Hall. Under the arrangement of Hong Shan, Hong Fan, Hong Sheng, and Hong Ming agreed to meet here. However, when Hong Fan arrived, he saw Hong Li was there, sitting on the left and right with Hong Sheng. He went forward to greet each of them, and still called Hong Li a teacher. You have left the clan school, so you don't need to call me a teacher anymore, the latter waved his hand. Just call me uncle according to seniority. I just had nothing to do today, and I just happened to hear from Master Shan that you were going to join the Red Cavalry, so I came to see you, Hong Li added casually, motioning Hong Fan to sit down next to him and Hong Shan. Among the 5 people present, Hong Shan was the oldest. But this old man only had the inner vision realm, and strictly speaking, he was not a warrior. So considering the combined cultivation, seniority, and position, Hong Li had the highest status. He was also the first to speak. Hong Fan, I know you have a strong desire to fight, but the Red Cavalry is no different from other places, Hong Li asked Hong Fan first. You have to think clearly. Once you enter here, you will be bound by military orders. From now on, it will be a real fight, and you will see the real life and death, uncle. I have thought it through, Hong Fan answered without hesitation. Joining the Red Cavalry is to improve martial arts and to contribute to the clan. As a member of the Hong family, how can I retreat? Okay, I want you to have this intention. Hong Li nodded and looked at Hong Sheng again. Ah Sheng, I heard a few days ago that you can't give a response to Hong Fan's matter for the time being, but what's the difficulty? As soon as this was said, Hong Fan knew that Hong Li didn't just come to see him by chance, but came to help him. Speaking of it, the old and the young have been together in the clan school for 2 years and 8 months, but until the first 2.5 years, there was no such thing as admiration and recognition. It was only in the last 2 months that he saw the latter's martial arts improvement and enterprising spirit, and the relationship between the instructor and the disciple really became a master and apprentice. And one of the ways Hong Fan first thought of to solve this matter was to ask Hong Li to come forward. Uncle, you worry too much? There is no difficulty in having a capable child in the family join the Red Cavalry. On the other side, Hong Sheng smiled. I am ashamed to say that I encountered some obstacles in my practice a few days ago, and I was a little negligent about other things. P.S. I would like to express my special thanks to all the old readers who have come from the old books. Thank you for your posts, votes, and rewards for the new book. How should I put it? It feels like the journey is long, and I am glad to meet old friends. You know that I love to read book reviews, so I am very familiar with each of your ideas. Many adjustments and improvements when I wrote the last book also came from your opinions and feedback. There are too many people to list one by one. You can find your own seat. Haha. In addition, those who have not invested can invest, and those who have recommended can vote, which should be of some help to the ranking of the new book list. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Fate. That's good. Since that's the case, I'm here today, so let's finalize the matter. Upon hearing this, Hong Li directly moved the topic forward. Hong Ming, which of the 6 Red Cavalry teams is most in need of manpower? He looked at his cousin who was in charge of the actual management and called him by his name. Although they were of the same generation, Hong Li was nearly 30 years older than Hong Ming. Brother, the 3rd and 5th teams have the least people. Hong Ming sat up and replied. Then why don't we go to the 3rd team and follow a Lai? Hong Li looked at Hong Shen. The Lai mentioned was named Hong Lai, the captain of the 3rd team, and the youngest son of Hong Li himself. Just do as my uncle wants. Hong Sheng immediately made the decision without any hesitation. Speaking of which, Hong Li is old and no longer holds any position in any power department within or outside the clan. He can be regarded as retreating to the 2nd line. But he has a high level of cultivation, rich experience, and is responsible for the enlightenment of the children, so in terms of influence, he is probably only inferior to the clan leader. It's a coincidence that Zhang Yao was originally under Brother Lai. Now Brother Fan has filled his vacancy, which is also a good story, Hong Sheng said again. Then, he looked at Hong Fan. I have seen the family precepts that Huang Ping was punished to copy this morning. Hong Sheng smiled bitterly. As a brother, don't forget the unpleasant words he said during the victory festival. Of course not, I know he is still a child. Hong Fan cupped his hands and said apologetically. It's just that he was disdainful to my face that day, and I was really annoyed in my heart. So I was so formal. Hong Sheng nodded when he heard it, which was also in line with his thoughts. Compared with Hong Ping, Hong Fan is indeed much more precocious, but anyway, he is just a boy under 18 years old. How can he have so many thoughts? That's good. I have prepared a little gift. You can accept it. Just as Hong Ping's apology, after everything was agreed, Hong Sheng took out a wooden box and opened it to reveal the 5 Tuaguang pills inside. Hong Fan would not play hard to get when the benefits came to him. He took the gift and thanked him sincerely. In the military honor hall, the brothers were in a friendly and respectful mood. Hong Li stroked his beard and nodded secretly. Once the things above were done, the progress below was particularly fast. Just 3 days later, on May 24th, the captain of the 3rd team of the Red Cavalry met with the future new members. The location was the stable of the Hong Mansion. When you reach the top of the Guanchong realm, your burst speed is no different from that of a war horse, Hong Lai introduced while feeding his beloved horse Xuan Jiao. He was just over 1.8 meters tall, with thick black eyebrows and short hair like a nail board. Although he was wearing a casual uniform at this time, Hong Fan knew that he was not an ordinary person just by looking at the pair of thick knuckle hands stroking the horse's head. But the key of a warrior in the power realm is precious and difficult to sustain. Even a master in the pure realm who can chase a running beast and catch a flying bird still needs to rely on a horse when rushing to the battle. After feeding the horse, Hong Lai clapped his hands and led Hong Fan to the other side of the stable. You have joined the Red Cavalry, so you must also be equipped with a horse. These rows are all good horses without owners. You can choose one that is destined to be with you. Hearing this, Hong Fan walked past a dozen horses one by one. Most of these horses were docile. Only a 2-year-old yellow stallion stretched out its mouth to bite, and was particularly unyielding. Team leader, this is it. Hong Fan immediately felt that he had a connection with this horse. There was no other reason, he just liked guys who were pretentious. You are good at choosing. This yellow stallion has strong muscles and a strong temperament, and I originally planned to keep it for breeding, Hong Lai nodded. But since you have chosen it, I will have the groom castrate it tomorrow. If it recovers smoothly, it can be used as usual in 10 days. In 3 or 4 months at most, it will no longer remember that it was a male horse. The two talked about horses and turned to leave the stable, leaving only the yellow horse that thought it had won and had no idea of its fate still shaking its head. A quarter of an hour later, in the armory, Hong Lai called him his uncle and completed the registration procedures with the armorer. According to Hong Fan's body shape, the latter issued a cavalry hornbow, 2 pots of arrows, a horizontal sword, and a horse lance. This hornbow is stronger than the ordinary heavy bow, but it is just right for us Guantong realm warriors to use on horseback. Hong Lai carefully checked the equipment, drew the string once, and handed the bow and arrow to Hong Fan. You can try the strength, and be careful not to fire it in vain. Then, the two tried the sword and lance respectively. The horizontal sword is narrow, straight and sharp, 3 feet long, and engraved with the inscription Wang Bu using, which makes it very handy. But compared with the horse lance, this good sword immediately looks delicate. The long lance that Hong Fan just got is 4 meters long, and the double-edged lance tip alone is 60 centimeters long, and there are obvious armor-piercing protrusions on it. Just as he was playing with it and waving it, heavy footsteps approached in the warehouse. This time, a fish-scale leather armor was brought in. "You guys count, everything is ready," the armor officer put the leather armor on the long table and said in a rough voice. "Hong Fan, come and try it on," Hong Lai said immediately. This leather armor is made of hard leather square pieces about an inch long, with a cross collar and long sleeves, and split front, back, left and right, like a robe. Hong Fan put down the horse lance and put on the armor with the help of the two. Unexpectedly, the armor did not feel heavy after putting it on, and the arm movements were very flexible. "How is it?" Hong Lai smiled. "This leather armor is made by skilled craftsmen in the weapon production supervisor. Each piece of armor is made of high-quality raw cowhide coated with tune oil, first roasted by fire, and then repeatedly forged with iron filings. The hardness is no less than that of iron sheets, and ordinary bows and arrows cannot penetrate it." Hong Fan was a little surprised. Ironware was not rare in Jinhae City. "If you want hard armor, why give up iron for leather?" Hong Lai also saw his doubts and answered, "Although this leather armor is good, it is certainly not as good as iron armor. It's not that our family can't afford iron armor. It's just that full steel armor is a major ban of the court. Local families like us are particularly sensitive and dare not cross it easily." Not daring easily seems to be daring. Hong Fan nodded when he heard this, and heard Hong Lai's disapproval when he mentioned the court. After all, the emperor is far away, and Dahua is probably hard to be farther away from the capital than Jinhae City. "Okay, I'll take all the things for you. If there are any damages during the mission in the future, you can apply for a new one." After saying goodbye to the armor officer, Hong Lai helped Hong Fan carry the things out. As if he was afraid that Hong Fan would not treasure his equipment enough, he added, "Even if ordinary people work hard all their lives, they still cannot afford it." Hong Fan was quite surprised. Although the people in Jinhae City were not rich, each household had an income of more than 10 taels of silver a year after deducting rent and taxes. "You will know if you listen to my calculations," Hong Lai replied. "The yellow horse is very majestic, and the cost is about 30 taels of silver. The leather armor, bow and sword together cost 50 taels, and this high-quality horse spear is made of Qianpi steel, which is at least comparable to that horse. In addition, the clan will also bear the cost of taking care of Zhu Yiqi's warhorse, not counting the labor. The grass and bean feed for a horse alone costs 10 taels of silver a year. A horse needs 10 taels of silver a year." Hong Fan raised his eyebrows. "This is equivalent to several antliu." Chapter 36 Progress. "This is not the biggest expense of the Red Cavalry." Hong Lai shook his head and smiled. "The biggest expense is actually us. In the Red Cavalry, the minimum annual salary is 60 taels, and there are rewards for military merits. After all the calculations, the silver that the clan spends on more than 60 of us in a year is nearly 10,000. If 10,000 taels of silver are converted into martial arts resources, what kind of progress can it bring?" Hong Fan was shocked when he heard this. "But you don't have to worry." Hong Lai mistakenly thought that his words put too much pressure on his cousin. "We have a lot of good farmland in the Hong family. We also have more than a dozen Shangshan farms in the southeast of Jinhae City. Each farm has at least 300 to 400 taels of income a year, in addition to the shops and rented houses in the city. After deducting all expenses in a year, there is always a net income of 3,000 to 4,000 taels of silver." "Well, it's still early today. How about I take you to the martial arts field to practice bows and swords?" Hong Lai asked. Hong Fan would naturally not refuse. The martial arts training ground of Hong Mansion is located in the northwest corner. Because it is mainly used to practice the art of archery and horse riding, the ground is wider than the martial arts training ground in the northeast corner. Seeing Hong Lai leading the strangers in, many knights and archers greeted from afar. What surprised Hong Fan the most was that in a corner of the field, among a dozen steel balls suspended by iron chains, there was a burly man wearing thick cloth armor, rushing back and forth, slashing and killing with bare hands. "That's the captain of the first team, Hong Bo from the 7th room." Hong Lai glanced at him with a slightly cold face. "He has 10 regular cultivations in the Guantong realm, only one less than me, but he is born with great strength." He can wear 100 Jin heavy armor and use a 30 Jin heavy weapon to charge and kill continuously at high speed. Hong Fan's heart jumped when he heard this. Although he didn't play with weapons in his previous life, he was not completely ignorant of cold weapons. Generally speaking, the weight of a two-handed sword is about 6 or 8 Jin at most. A decoration sledgehammer weighing about 12 Jin is enough to smash a concrete wall, and it is definitely too powerful to be used to kill people. If a 30 Jin weapon is swung, it will probably literally smash both the man and the horse. With 100 Jin armor and a 30 Jin weapon, he can still run fast. Against such a warrior, what is the point of the number of mortals? Hong Fan couldn't help but sigh. How can it be so exaggerated? Hong Lai grinned. The average peak of the Guantong realm can only withstand a force of 2,000 Jin. Even if he is fully armored, he can't defeat the iron nets and throwing ropes of dozens of old soldiers. Yes, there are martial arts in this world, and there are also mechanical elixirs. Hong Fan was stunned, and immediately thought of the weapon workshop, the Dahua military-industrial complex. Okay, today I will first take you to familiarize yourself with the basics of pushing the bow, pulling the string, and leaning when shooting, and then teach you the 8 methods of using the sword. Hong Lai took a practice bow and wooden sword from the weapon rack and took Hong Fan to the shooting range. The two spent the remaining hour and a half of the afternoon in the martial arts field. Hong Fan's learning speed was so fast that his temporary teacher was very surprised. I didn't expect that my cousin is so handsome and smart. Hong Lai put away his bow and sword and patted Hong Fan on the shoulder. At this rate, it will take 2 more full days for me to teach you all the basic knowledge and practice methods, then you will be able to hone yourself. Anyway, if there is no order from above, I am usually either at home or here. You can come to me if you have any questions. Facing the setting sun, Hong Lai laughed heartily. He is 29 years old this year and has already married and has children. Thank you, cousin. I will trouble you in the future. Hong Fan thanked him solemnly and bowed deeply. It's all my job. You are so serious. Is it because I am not sincere in calling you cousin? Hong Lai waved his hand and deliberately put on a stern face to question. The two laughed. You are just a substitute in the team now. You must at least master the shooting, horse shooting, foot sword, horse lance, and the killing methods of the Guantong realm before you can officially join the team, Hong Lai added. With your understanding, I think you can definitely do it in 3 months. In the evening, the two cousins strode out of the martial arts arena one after the other. Hong Fan, who was behind him, looked at Hong Lai's back and vaguely saw his father Hong Li's appearance when he was young. More than 2 months later, it was the 6th day of August. In Liangzhou in the northwest, it was still a little hot during the day, but as soon as the sun set, the cold immediately climbed up. Summer had completely left here, leaving only the dew condensed every morning as a farewell tear. This solar term was named White Dew. At noon, Hong Fan took a bow and sword and rode a gelding out of the city and entered the mountains from the southeast. It was still a familiar forest, but most of the leaves of the trees had turned yellow. Hong Fan led the horse into the forest, and the sound of autumn was heard on the dead branches and fallen leaves. Bentley, just stay here and eat grass honestly, don't move. He tied the yellow horse under a tree and patted the horse's face gently. The loyal Bentley snorted in response, having long forgotten that he was once a bastard. Under the cover of the dense forest, Hong Fan first practiced a few iron hands, then pulled out a Wang Bu using horizontal sword, practicing swordsmanship and the fire sword killing method. Not long after, several large trees around were hit by disasters, and several charred scars were left. When his true energy was exhausted, Hong Fan used the trees as targets and practiced rapid shooting with the bamboo arrows he bought. The horn bow does not need to be fully opened, and one shot can be made every 2 seconds. Including the effort of pulling out arrows and correcting postures, hundreds of shots have been practiced in half an hour. At a distance of 20 meters, even if each arrow does not hit the center of the bullseye, it will not be far off. In just 2.5 months, Hong Fan, relying on his intelligence that originally exceeded that of ordinary people and the blessing of martial arts, has already mastered the bow, sword, horse, lance, and the basic killing method of Yanliu Gong. As for the most important aspect of the body, he naturally will not fall behind. During this period, Hong Fan consumed martial arts resources worth 70 or 80 taels of silver. After opening up the second main meridian, the hand-joint pericardium meridian, he opened up 4 of the 9 major acupoints of the hand-joint heart meridian. In terms of the cultivation of Yanliu Guang alone, he has caught up with Zhang Yaod, who is 10 years older. But his progress is far more than that. With a silent flick of his fingers, Hong Fan raised a large piece of desert sand under his feet, covering himself and several large trees around him. Within a radius of 10 meters, the wind was low and whimpering, and the sunlight and vision were cut off. But in Hong Fan's perception, the world within 10 steps was still clear. Because every grain of sand controlled by the sand world is always giving feedback to the owner. From the beginning of the conception, to the completion of the design, and then to today's realization, it took a full 2 months. Hong Fan sighed softly, drew his sword and cut a fallen leaf that was caught in the wind and sand beside him into 2 pieces. This move of sand fog, I finally succeeded. After dispersing the sand fog, he returned the sword to the sheath and summoned a ball of gravel into his palm. With a push of his backhand, the gravel turned into 3 thorns, which crossed a 5-meter distance like lightning and pierced into the tree trunk 1 inch. This move of sand thorns is simpler than sand fog. Hong Fan had already mastered it a month ago. As for Bentley next to him, his eyes were already dull and he even forgot to chew the grass in his mouth. If it is a life and death fight, I should have no problem defeating 3 or 4 Jiang Yaods with 1 on many. Hong Fan thought while restoring the training ground to its original state. The sand world is so powerful, no wonder Jingsha Xingjin, who is in the innate realm, is enough to turn the tide of the Golden Sea War. P.S. The alarm clock rang several times today and I couldn't get up. After all, it's Saturday. In addition, if you pass by, please click to vote for the recommendation. Thank you very much. Chapter 37 Pi. After both tubes of mana were exhausted, it was almost noon. Hong Fan sat down on the tree stump next to him, took out the pancakes and bacon that Bentley carried on his back and ate them with relish. As he ate, he kept thinking. In the past 2 months, he no longer had a monthly salary, but Zhu Yiqi's monthly salary of 5 taels had been received on time without any compromise. Counting the previous surplus, Hong Fan had 34 or 35 taels of silver in reserve cash, and martial arts resources could last for about 4 months. Although he was reluctant to admit it, he knew that his talent had been realized to the limit. Based on the speed of penetrating a regular meridian in 2 months, and considering the fact that martial arts practice becomes more difficult as it goes up, Hong Fan estimated that he could enter the realm of completeness around the age of 21. There are 2 major prerequisites for this. One is that there is no bottleneck when breaking through the barrier. The other is to maintain an investment of at least 400 taels of silver every year. 400 taels, Hong Fan swallowed the bacon and sucked his teeth. This money can buy 80 acres of upper land and hire at least 5 masters of the realm of penetration to work for a year. Even for a landlord family with 1,000 acres of land, it is not easy to provide for them. After all, it is impossible for only one person in the family to eat and practice as much as he wants, and the rest of the family will have to save money for him. But even so, at the age of 21, the cultivation level of Hong Sheng, who has just entered the Hunren realm, is still far behind that of Hong Sheng, who has reached the Hunren realm 6 meridians. Now that I think about it, God has been very kind to me after my transmigration. Hong Fan folded the last corner of the cake together and chewed it, thinking, if my soul transmigrated to an ordinary person's home, I don't know how slim it would be to find a martial art of the level of Yanliu Guang. In addition, Jinhe City is really too remote. At this time, how could he not think of the benefits of the dragon soul fruit? Eating a fruit is much more exciting than 2 Iguang pills. But the problem is that even if Hong Fan encounters the dragon soul tree several times during his inner vision every day, he still can't figure out the mechanism of its fruiting. The only guess at present is to kill the Star Lord or capture the authority. But there was no other star god in Jinhe City except Hong Fan himself. Even if there was, he didn't have the ability to kill one. What can I do if I have a treasure mountain but can't find the door? Hong Fan sighed, and saw a grass yellow forked horned roe deer peeking from the bushes in the distance. Before he knew it, he had reached out and grabbed the horn bow. Recently, Hong Fan has been practicing very hard, and his appetite has been increasing. In order to save as much money as possible, he often hunts for meat. But when he was drawing the bow, Hong Fan remembered that there was a wild boar at home that he had just eaten half of, and finally stopped. The roe deer in the distance didn't know that it had walked around the gates of hell, but just walked away slowly along the young branches of the bushes. On the same day, in the afternoon, Hong Fan passed through the east gate of Jinhe City and entered the city amid the warm greetings of the soldiers. Almost every pedestrian on the road, regardless of gender, would look at him for a moment. Hong Fan was already used to this. In this world, a castrated Bentley is comparable to a sports car with fine-tuned controls in the previous life. An exquisite hornbow and a horizontal sword are similar to an assault rifle. With a handsome face, it would be strange if no one turned their heads to look at him. After crossing 2 streets, Hong Fan stopped in front of a small stall and planned to buy some fruit. At this moment, a conversation reached his ears. The finer the cut, the less the loss. Cut and cut until it cannot be cut, then it will merge with the circumference and nothing will be lost. Cut, 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 I'm going to cut you a ball. This circumscribed polygon has been cut to nearly 100,000, and it's still not enough. Can it be cut to millions or tens of millions? Hong Fan turned around and saw 2 young men in green robes and sleeves passing by behind him. This kind of uniform is the standard for the weapons supervisor. It's already 11 decimals, this precision is already very high. The one with the bigger head on the left of the 2 continued to complain. What's the point of calculating further? Even the top-notch craftsman project supervised by the chief construction supervisor cannot use such precision. Isn't it because it's useless that we are asked to calculate? The other man with the big ears sneered. Calculate for his whole life, and then calculate a few more decimals. Maybe it can be used in the future, but anyway, we won't get any benefit. That's right, the big-headed man sighed when he heard it. I was exiled to this remote place with my master, and I shouldn't have expected to be assigned any important work. At this point, the 2 of them were speechless and became more depressed. If they were ordinary people or noble sons of wealthy families, they would not understand what they were talking about at this moment. But Hong Fan understood it instantly. The 2 of them were obviously discussing the use of geometric methods to calculate pi, Greek letter pi. The so-called geometric method starts from the unit circle, first using the inscribed regular hexagon to find the lower limit of pi is 3, and then using the circumscribed regular hexagon and the Pythagorean theorem to find the upper limit of pi is less than 4. Next, double the number of sides of the inscribed regular hexagon and the circumscribed regular hexagon respectively, turn them into regular dodecagons respectively, and then use the Pythagorean theorem to improve the lower and upper bounds of pi. According to what the 2 said, the circumscribed polygons are cut into nearly 100,000 inches. Hong Fan calculated it and knew that it was 98,304 polygons, 32 cap 15. The accuracy of pi to 11 decimal places means that the deviation of components with a kilometer length is only a dozen nanometers, which is more than enough even in the industrial age. After playing with geometry to this point, it is extremely cumbersome to cut polygons further. The most important thing is, even if you cut it for a lifetime, what's the point of calculating 10 or 20 more digits? No wonder the 2 were so discouraged, Hong Fan thought, and realized that his chance had come. When he was young in his previous life, he was forced to recite ancient poems in 100 digits of pi by his parents who wanted him to be successful. Now, more than 20 years have passed, and he can still remember most of it. It's not just the result. As a science and engineering man, he not only knows geometry, but also analysis. For modern engineers, this is not a high-end content, just a Taylor expansion. So, Hong Fan immediately went up to talk to him. You 2, I'm sorry to hear your conversation. Are you discussing the calculation of pi? Big Head and Big Ears were in a bad mood and wanted to scold him immediately when they were interrupted. But when they saw Hong Fan wearing a red military uniform and carrying a BMW bow and sword, they suppressed their temper. This young man also knows pi, Big Head asked with a frown. He knew that the other party was probably a member of the Hong family. But as a second-class craftsman with a formal official status in the instrument works supervisor and coming from the prefecture, Big Head didn't think much of the locals of Jinhei. I know a little bit. I have always liked mathematics and have spent time studying this field in recent years, Hong Fan replied. Oh, that's good. Calculating more can activate your brain. Big Ears obviously didn't want to chat with this overly handsome warrior. These guys with muscles all over their heads, how could they understand mathematics? We have something else to do, so we'll take our leave now, sir. He casually bowed, turned around with his companion, and prepared to leave. Just then, the 2 heard a voice behind them. 3.1415926535897. As soon as the 13 digits after the decimal point came out, Zhang Fenger was frightened and his legs went weak. He tripped over a paving brick and fell to the street. Chapter 38 Taylor Expand. How could you possibly know the precision of the circle calculated in the prison? The man with big ears fell, but he didn't care about the pain and quickly got up to question. It shouldn't be. Although the confidentiality level of this secret is not very high, it shouldn't be known to outsiders, but he still missed the point. No, Jingfu, the number he just said is not 11, but 13. Big Head pulled his companion's arm and added. Only then did the one called Jingfu react. The number reported by the young master of the Hong family opposite was actually 2 more than the number reported by the weapons supervisor. Although the number may not be correct, the fact that the first 11 numbers can match is enough to make the 2 people odd. No, this young master, you have to go back with me to see the master. He didn't care about his low level of cultivation, came up and grabbed Hong Fan's sleeve, and said sternly. Of course, the latter would not refuse. Hong Fan originally used this to seek a step forward. A quarter of an hour later, Jinhei City Weapons Supervisor. In the main hall, Master Wen Hongwen was writing and drawing on paper with a thinly sharpened charcoal pencil wrapped in cloth. But he was interrupted by noisy footsteps from outside. Master Wen looked up and saw his 2 disciples Jia Zhiong and Zhu Jingfu trotting in, followed by a handsome young man. Teacher, I have something important to report, Zhu Jingfu, who had big ears, shouted as soon as he entered the door. This young man, because he spoke too quickly, he was choked by his own saliva before he finished a sentence. Sit down and talk, what's wrong with you? Wen Hongwen shouted, and immediately killed the eagerness of the 2 disciples. At this time, Hong Fan was also secretly observing the head of the Jinhei Kezua supervisor, who was a 6th rank official and the same level as the city judge Huangwu. He was short and strong, with eyes like copper bells and thick joints. Although he was dressed in a scholar's robe, he exuded abandoned spirit. Teacher, this Huangfan master claims to have calculated the 13-digit value of pi, Zhu Jingfu said after calming down his cough. Wen Hongwen's face remained unchanged and his lips pursed slightly, as if he was disdainful. But Jia Zhiong's words made him no longer calm, and the first 11 digits are consistent with all the calculations in our prison. Are you serious? Wen Hongwen asked in a low voice, looking at Hongfan with a sharp gaze. The latter bowed and smiled, and immediately recited the 13 digits of pi again. For a moment, the main hall fell into silence. Zio Zhu, Zio Jia, you must have accidentally leaked the secret value. At this time, a reproachful voice came from the side door. Hongfan turned his head and saw a tall, thin, middle-aged man with a mustache walking in. Master Craftsman, you are wronging us. Upon seeing this person, Zhu and Jia immediately stood up and replied, the Master Craftsman is a 6th rank official, and the Master Craftsman is an 8th rank official. This person should be Wen Hongwen's deputy. Hong Fan pondered in his heart and spoke to defend himself again. My lords, I was not acquainted with you, Zhu Jia, before today. As for the 13 digits of pi, I calculated them independently, but his words made the tall and thin master sneer even more. Then let me ask you, where did you get the algorithm? How long did it take you to calculate such an accurate number? I think you are at most 17 or 18 years old, and you obviously have martial arts skills. You can't say that you relied on your own exploration, right? Even in Hong Fan's view, this person's doubts are reasonable. In his previous life, he himself would not believe that a person could create results that surpass the mainstream academic community by independent deduction from scratch. But who makes the time traveler stand on the shoulders of countless giants? Reporting to you, I figured out the algorithm by myself. Calculating these 13 digits was also easy, and it didn't take much time. Hong Fan bowed slightly and said proudly. This time, even Wen Hongwen, who had been non-committal, showed impatience. But before they could speak, Hong Fan spoke again. I know that you use the method of dividing a circle to calculate pi. In my opinion, this method is too primitive, complicated and inefficient. Although his tone was sincere, his words were offensive. How dare you? The tall and thin master craftsman was furious and scolded. Jin Hong, calm down. Wen Hongwen waved his hand, signaling his deputy to calm down. The method of dividing a circle is primitive? Master Hong is quite arrogant. He put his hands behind his back and stared at the young man with a sharp gaze. Now that we have paper and pen, why don't we let us see your methods? That's what I want. I dare not ask. Hong Fan immediately agreed, stepped forward and took the charcoal pencil, and casually lifted the half-written paper by Wen Hongwen to the ground, revealing the white paper underneath. Then, according to the mathematical knowledge of his previous life, he started from the definition of derivative and wrote down the complete derivation process of Taylor's formula. For a while, the only sounds in the room were the wind, breathing, and the rustling sound of charcoal writing. Soon, the derivation of Taylor's formula was completed, which only took up half a page. Finally, he drew a coordinate system, with the origin as the endpoint, and drew a ray at a 45-degree angle, and wrote down the final formula: tan 4 equals 1, Greek letter pi 4 equals 1/1/3 plus 1/5 1/7 minus 1, k, 1 comma, 2k plus 1, plus, how is it? Hong Fan threw down the charcoal pencil, thinking about his solid university foundation, and couldn't help feeling confused. But he didn't get the expected praise. Mr. Fan, what are these ghostly talismans you wrote? Wen's Hongwen asked, suppressing his temper. Hong Fan immediately realized that the symbol systems of the two worlds were completely incompatible. Not to mention the various symbols and English letters, even the writing of numbers is completely different. So, he awkwardly put down his master's demeanor and compared all the symbols and concepts in the entire deduction system with Wen's Hongwen one by one. After more than half an hour of detailed communication, Hong Fan understood that Wen's Hongwen's title as a master and Kazuojian's theoretical research were not in vain. The latter already understood concepts such as coordinate system, trigonometric function, derivative, calculus, etc. At the same time, Wen's Hongwen and Jin Hong also knew that this young man was not talking nonsense, and he really had some attainments in mathematics. After the communication, Hong Fan rewrote the above derivation process using Kazuojian's symbol system. This time, when he put down the charcoal pencil, except for Zujia, the two junior craftsmen who were still half confused, the master and the master craftsman had their eyes glued to the paper and didn't care about anything else. As time passed, the more the two middle-aged men read, the more they understood, the more shocked they were. In Hong Fan's previous life, Taylor's formula was a result of the early 18th century. This set of tools can approximate some complex functions as simple polynomial functions, and transform nonlinear problems into linear problems. In addition, it can also be used to find limits, determine function extreme values, find the value of high-order derivatives at a certain point, determine the convergence of generalized integrals, approximate calculations, prove inequalities, etc. Finding Greek letter pi is just one of the applications. When Taylor's formula was invented, Newton was still alive, and Taylor was one of the most important representatives of the Newtonian school. Of course, when Hong Fan was in college, this was already an ancient thing, and it was something that any undergraduate student in the mathematics department had to understand as soon as they entered college. But in Dahua, this is a serious frontier and cutting edge. P.S. Although the author studied finance for his master's degree, he graduated from a serious mathematics department. He participated in mathematics and physics competitions from elementary school to high school and won some national awards. But now that I am over 30, all of the above have been scattered. Even if I pick up the book and read it again, I can't even find the feeling of déjà vu. So if there is anything wrong with the theoretical things, everyone will just laugh it off. After all, the knowledge level set by Hong Fan is much higher than that of the author. Also, the recommendation votes for new books seem to be very important. If you pass by, please cast a recommendation vote. Thank you. Chapter 39 Promotion and Wealth. What this means is, Wen's Hongwen read the short proof again and again, constantly picking out some unclear parts and asking questions on the spot. Hong Fan did not hide anything and tried his best to explain it to him. But the more he did so, the more a contradictory feeling arose in Wen's Hongwen's heart. The knowledge he felt from Hong Fan was extremely mature and systematic. This really didn't seem like something that an unknown person could tinker with in his spare time. So you studied all this by yourself? Wen's Hongwen let out a long breath and looked up and asked. Yes, I tinkered with it myself in my spare time, Hong Fan replied frankly, without showing a trace of guilt. Because since his freshman year, he has been committed to the solidity of the knowledge he has learned. Even those theorems and lemmas that only need to be known how to apply, he must be familiar with them until he can prove them independently. If not, he would not be able to stand out quickly in his subsequent work. It's really amazing, Wen's Hongwen exclaimed. Not to mention this new theory, even this writing system you created is extraordinary. He turned around and picked up the paper that Hong Fan had written at the beginning, and looked through it carefully. Although it cannot be said that its symbols and numbers are comprehensively superior to those used by the instrument, its clarity and simplicity are worth learning. And this is exactly the best evidence of Hong Fan's originality. It is really too outrageous that someone who is outside the system can come up with such a thing behind closed doors. In any case, facts are more important than anything else. Wen Zhongwen and Jin Hong adhered to the principle of seeking truth from facts and finally accepted the only possible explanation. That is, the young man who was talking eloquently in front of them was a genuine genius. Does this theory have a name? Wen Zhongwen asked, pushing away the sundries and carefully placing the two manuscripts flat in the center of the long table. Yes, I call it Taylor's formula. Hong Fan was silent for a moment, but in the end he felt ashamed of plagiarism and reported the original name. But unexpectedly, the two elders nodded when they heard the name. Tai means extreme, most, and Li can mean force. Wen Zhongwen tasted it, stroked his beard, and nodded. This method can be infinitely expanded and approach the limit. It is named Taylor, which is indeed meaningful. This TM is also possible. Now it was Hong Fan who didn't know how to respond. Master, Jin Hong called softly on the other side, giving an anxious look. Wen Zhongwen naturally knew what his deputy meant. Mr. Hong, I would like to ask, are you willing to join the Instrument Works Bureau? He suddenly said. If you are willing, I can immediately give you the official title of a master craftsman, the same as Jin Hong. This is also the highest treatment I can give as a master craftsman within my authority. Hong Fan was stunned again. He knew that this trip would be fruitful, but he didn't expect the gain to be so straightforward. As for Zhu and Jia, who were still forcibly comprehending Taylor's formula, they were shocked and speechless after hearing this. Master craftsman, Zhu Jingfu was born as a low-level craftsman. He worked in the Liangzhou Instruments Bureau for 7 or 8 years before he was recognized by Wen Zhongwen and accepted as a disciple. Now he is 25 years old, but he is only a 9th-rank second-rank craftsman. Jin Hong, who is a master craftsman of the 8th rank, is already 38 years old this year. This Hong Fan has a pretty face and looks only 17 or 18 years old at most. However, Zhu and Jia had no idea that Wen Zhongwen and Jin Hong even thought that the title of Master Craftsman was too light. What's wrong with a Master Craftsman? Jin Hong sneered. If there is no problem with this Taylor formula, at least we have to change the Master Craftsman. As he said, he bowed to Hong Fan again and smiled particularly warmly. Besides, Master Hong is so young and has a dignified appearance. It is unknown whether he will become the Master Craftsman in the future, with the level of Wen and Jin. Although they could not independently judge that Hong Fan's proof was completely reliable, they knew that it was of great value just from the part they could understand. So high that they might be promoted back to the prefecture capital Zhejiang for their merits. Grand Supervisor, this time it was Jia Zhiang who was so frightened that his mouth couldn't close. That's the 3rd rank, higher than the county magistrate, and even the general Yuanxi master can't compare to it, Zhu Jingfu whispered, and couldn't help looking Hong Fan up and down. What do you know? How much brain can be used as a county magistrate? Only rare people can update the avenue of mathematics. Jin Hong immediately disdainful. While the few people were talking, Hong Fan had already weighed the pros and cons in his mind. In terms of power, the instrument supervisor far exceeds the Hong family, and is not a force on the same level as the Zhu Yiki. But because of this, as a first-class powerful department in Dahua, it is rumored that it is greatly restricted in practicing martial arts. Hong Fan lacked a comprehensive understanding of the joints at this time, but he was unwilling to bet his life easily. So, he sorted out his thoughts and gave a reply. I am the eldest son of the Hong family. I have been influenced by family teaching since I was a child and have been committed to martial arts. As for numerology, it is just a hobby after practicing. Now that I have broken through the Guantong realm not long ago, and I am serving in the Red Cavalry, it is really difficult for me to serve 2 jobs at the same time. He bowed slightly and apologized for refusing the other party's kindness. Wen Zhongwen was not disappointed at all. So you are worried about this? Not only did he not feel offended by Hong Fan's thoughts, but he understood them very well. In Dahua Jiazhou, martial arts has been the foundation for thousands of years, the criterion, and the right path. In comparison, whether it is literature, policy essays, or numerology and machinery, they can only be second to it. As the saying goes, one force breaks all laws. In other words, Wen Zhongwen's persuasion just now was like a coach in the previous life urging top students to practice sports, and it was normal to be rejected. Don't worry, Mr. Hong, the official position of the master craftsman I give you does not require regular duties. He continued to raise the conditions. And for those below the rank of the 7th rank, there is no mandatory practice of changing the cultivation method. You can continue to practice martial arts as usual, and just focus on numerology as before. If you have any questions, you can come to me or Jin Hong to discuss at any time. In addition to the rank of the 8th rank, the annual salary of 400 Dan of Master Craftsman will be paid to you as usual. There is only one thing: your tailor formula must be registered under the name of the Jinhei Weaponry Supervisor and reported to the state. Wen Hongwen finished speaking in one breath. Jin Hong was afraid that Hong Fan would be dissatisfied, so he immediately added, "You don't have to worry about us stealing your results. The author's name is still yours, but it is counted as the output of the Jinhei Weaponry Supervisor, the rank of the 8th rank, the annual salary of 200 taels of silver, and no responsibility. The conditions have been given to this extent, and it would be ignorant to be picky. Such a great favor, Hong Fan is unworthy of it." Hong Fan sighed. Wen Hongwen just laughed happily when he heard this. "Our Kigen supervisor is the richest in the world. Even the Imperial Treasury depends on us to pay more profits every year. A little salary is nothing. Well, I will go and handle the position procedures for you now," Jin Hong said impatiently, as if he was afraid that the person in front of him would regret it. "You check the deduction of Taylor's formula again and annotate those new symbols so that I can send it to the state for review as soon as possible." Master Wen, who felt that his future had turned around, was also in a good mood. He patted Hong Fan on the shoulder and instructed him. The latter made a final request. "Master, I hope the Kigen supervisor will not disclose the news of my promotion to the Master Craftsman," he said with a bow. "Ah, I understand, Wen Hongwen responded immediately. "You are afraid that after you become famous, there will be more people around you who curry favor with the powerful, right? Hey, few of us like to waste time on socializing." On the other side, Jin Hong also felt the same way and nodded repeatedly. Regardless of the era, intellectuals who really like to study do not like to be disturbed by blind drifters. In fact, the two of them misunderstood Hong Fan's intention. He was actually worried that becoming famous too quickly would expose his past. After all, Aunt Liu, Hong Fu and others knew that Hong Fan had very few pieces of paper in his house for the past 17 years, and he never spent time studying any numerology. P.S. I have insufficient gastric motility again, and I took 2 metoclopramide pills but it still didn't work. I was too uncomfortable to sleep, so I just got up and updated first. Chapter 40 Joining the Team. When Hong Fan left the Kazoji in Yemen, it was already dark. "When I get home today, I will immediately prepare more research drafts, just in case," he thought to himself as he held a Bentley. "As for Aunt Liu and Hong Fu, I have to make some patches in advance to pretend." After completing the formalities just now, he got an unknown metal token representing the identity of a master craftsman, with the name Hong Fan and the words Kazojin Liangshao Jinhei newly engraved on the back. In addition, Wen Hongwen also issued 100 taels of silver, saying that it was the 200 stone salary that had not been issued in the first half of the year. This shows the wealth of the Kazojian. Counting the salary of Zhu Yiki, Hong Fan can now get at least 260 taels of silver a year, and his income is almost catching up with Chiuda and exceeding most people in the clan. Today's experience also showed him a new way. With the help of Wen Hongwen, if Hong Fan puts everything aside and operates within the Kazojian system, he may be able to gain power and status faster. However, after just a moment of imagination, he swept away these thoughts. As a time traveler, Hong Fan knew the power of industry and technology very well, but he also knew that all of the above depended on organization and system. Based on the current situation of Dahua, industrialization is by no means something that can be accomplished in 1 or 2 generations. In the final analysis, this is a world where the Heavenly Man and the Martial Saint are enemies of the country. Even if he climbed to the position of the Great Supervisor or even the Art Saint, he could not guarantee his right to life 100% in front of the top martial arts masters. On the contrary, reaching a high level in martial arts can not only bring strength, but also increase lifespan. From what he has seen and heard in recent months, Hong Fan learned that innate masters can live to 120 years old, and the Yuanxi and Shinran realms above can bring decades of life for each level. When we climb the ladder to heaven and break through the gate of heaven in the future, and then go back to climb the technology tree, it will be twice the result with half the effort. Thinking of this, Hong Fan gently touched the Master Craftsman token hidden in his inner clothes, and his heart was at peace, and his steps became lighter. 3 days later, August 9th. A day without any special features. Today, Hong Fan will participate in the inspection of the red-robed cavalry. The sun is high in the sky, and the dew has evaporated. In the martial arts arena, more than 60 people are wearing the same dark red military uniforms, divided into 6 teams, and each has his own warhorse. Hong Fan is in the 3rd team, with the team leader Hong Lai on his right and the bald man Shen Hong, who he had seen in Du Kangju before, on his left. In addition, the other 2 people, Sun Li and Kong Hai, who had dinner with Zhang Yao in Du Kangju at that time, are now his teammates. In the past 2.5 months, Hong Fan has been practicing archery and horse riding in the martial arts arena almost every day, and he has practiced with 10 teammates many times, so there is no need to introduce each other. "Gather everyone, there is an important event," Hong Sheng shouted in front of everyone. 3 new comrades will join us today, please let them come up. Hong Sheng stretched out his hand and 3 people in the queue below came out and stood beside him. Hong Ji, 19, has mastered 2 orthodox meridians. Guang Zheng, 22, has mastered 1 orthodox meridian. Hong Ji and Hong Fan are not much different in age. They were classmates in the clan school for 1 year, and later it was said that they went to the provincial capital first. As for Gong Zheng, he was probably a family son of the clan, and Hong Fan did not know him. After the 2 signed up, Hong Fan also put his hands behind his back and shouted loudly. Hong Fan, 18, has mastered 2 orthodox meridians. His birthday was September 11th, and it was early August now, so he directly signed up for 18. Hong Sheng glanced at the 3 people and nodded slowly. Hong Fan's speed of breaking through 1 orthodox meridian in 3 months was faster than he expected. This was of course a good thing. "I won't say any more nonsense," Hong Sheng continued. "According to the old rules, today's reunion here is not only a welcome, but also a review." He motioned the 3 people to line up. Hong Ji returned to the 1st team, and Gong Zheng went to the 5th team. 3 people, 3 games, all one-on-one. Start with Hong Ji, who's coming. The audience was silent for a while. Hong Fan had heard about the process of joining the team from Hong Lai before. Although it was nominally an inspection, in reality, no one would be really tested to see if they were qualified or not, and those who failed would be sent back to retake the course. After all, even the newcomers who could join the team were at least good at the Guantong realm, and 1 more person would mean 1 more person's strength. Doing this as a formality, on the one hand, was to kill the newcomers' morale, and on the other hand, it was also to let the old people test their quality. But because of this, the old people who were confident that they would come to inspect the newcomers would choose the subjects that the newcomers were best at, and they would be confident that they would win. Otherwise, it would be difficult to convince them. After a while, a short and strong man from the 2nd team spoke first. "I heard that Brother Hong Ji is best at riding and shooting. I am Suting from the 2nd team. I hope to learn from you." Hong Ji responded and stepped out of the line and mounted his horse. It was late autumn, and the air on the martial arts field was as cold as water, but Hong Fan could see that his forehead was covered with sweat before he started. Holding a bow in his hand and 2 arrows between his fingers, Hong Ji rode past 3 circular targets 30 meters away. Everyone saw him draw his bow 3 times in a row on his galloping horse. After 3 clicks, 3 arrows hit the target, and each arrow landed in the circle the size of a human face in the center. Hong Ji reined in his warhorse and waved his right fist, full of excitement. Applause broke out on the 1st team. In the crowd, Hong Fan also cheered secretly. He couldn't match the skill of shooting 3 arrows for the time being. On the training ground, Su Ting also rode his horse into the battle. With the same horse speed, distance, and action, he shot 3 arrows, but each arrow hit the tail of Hong Ji's arrow and broke the arrow in half. At this time, the whole audience cheered, but Hong Ji's smile was choked. When the cheers faded, Su Ting, who had dismounted, bowed to Hong Ji. "I heard that Brother Hong Ji is a 2nd-level orthodox, and I am 3 times more skilled than you. When you reach my level of skill one day, your archery skills should not be inferior to mine." After these words came out, Hong Ji's face finally looked much better. Everyone's eyes turned to Gong Zheng. "I'm Hong Quan from the 4th team. I want to try out Brother Gong Zheng's horse fighting skills." A long-limbed man stepped out of the team and shouted. Compared with Su Ting, his tone was obviously much more impolite. Gong Zheng didn't reply, but nodded, untied the thick cloth on the blade of the horse lance, and began to put on armor. "No need for horse lances for sparring, there are white wax poles over there." Seeing this, Hong Ming shook his head and smiled. After putting on the armor, the two men rode their horses at both ends of the field, waiting for Hong Sheng's order to charge towards each other. The red-clothed cavalry used good horses, which accelerated very quickly in short distances. Moreover, both of them held the poles with both hands and controlled the horses with their legs, showing excellent horsemanship. The result was clear in an instant when the weapons were exchanged. Guangzhang's long pole was swung away and suppressed by the opponent. When they passed each other, Hong Quan pushed the pole with his backhand and swept the newcomer off the horse. Throwing down a sentence still need to work hard, the former returned to the team on his horse. He's quite a taciturn person. Shen Hong, who was beside Hong Fan, looked at Guangzhang, who didn't say a word after being stabbed off his horse, and laughed. He can still enter the realm of penetration after 4 years after graduating from the clan school. He must have a strong character, Hong Lai added. Hearing this, the members of the third team all nodded in agreement with a little solemnity. After 2 games, the old man won with an overwhelming advantage. If he didn't think he was sure to win, who would be willing to come up and embarrass himself? There's only 1 game left. The third team, Hong Fan, Hong Sheng led everyone's attention to his half-brother. Who's coming? P.S. I'm asking for some recommendation votes during the new book period. Please readers, bow. Chapter 41 Heel Hook. The 6 teams were silent for a moment. It was not that the Red Cavalry thought Hong Fan was very strong, but they took into account the fact that Hong Sheng and Hong Fan were brothers from the same father. However, this concern was limited. Hong Bo, the captain of the first team, gave a slight signal, and immediately a man stepped out. I heard that brother Hong Fan's boxing skills are very good, and he defeated Zhang Yao just after entering the Guanchong realm. This man was strong and had short limbs, like a smaller brown bear. I am Hong Yan. I have learned boxing from my family since I was a child. I want to try boxing with my brothers. Please give me more guidance, senior. Hong Fan bowed and smiled, untied the horizontal sword at his waist, and walked to the front of the crowd. I don't dare to teach you, but I have one thing to say first. I am a regular cultivator of the 4th path of the Guanchong realm. Hong Yan rolled up his sleeves and stood opposite Hong Fan. The Red Cavalry is not a clan school. Everything is close to the battlefield, and there is no restriction on cultivation when we spar. Before taking action, he deliberately added another sentence. That's right, Hong Fan nodded. According to his assessment, the physical fitness of a regular channel in the Guanchong realm will be about 10% different. The difference between 2 regular channels is about 20%. However, Hong Fan himself has the passive enhancement of the sand world, and he has eaten a lot of chiseled meat jerky, so his physical fitness may not be worse than his. I also have something to say. When the 2 sides saluted each other, Hong Fan said softly, if I am lucky enough to capture you, please admit defeat quickly to avoid accidental injury. He said it sincerely. To use the weak to defeat the strong, Hong Fan must use judo, but this thing is easy to break bones. But to Hong Yan and everyone with strong hearing, this statement is somewhat provocative. Hong Sheng raised his hand and waved, and the battle officially began. Hong Yan rushed forward and opened the way with a collapsed fist, but the opponent who deliberately kept a distance slid to avoid it. A punch missed, and the former changed his stance and chased again, first chopping with a palm like an axe, and then stepping up to elbow. After 3 steps forward and 3 steps back, Hong Fan used his high arm to block a whip-like single chop, and finally got a gap. On the side, the men of the first team cheered like thunder, cheering for their teammates' fierce attack. The power is short and fierce, like a bow bursting and thunder blasting, and he is good at using fists, palms, hips and elbows, similar to the style of punching in his previous life. Hong Fan was not in a hurry to take the initiative to attack. He tried with fake moves while weaving countermeasures. The strength is slightly stronger than mine, and the speed is similar to mine. My biggest advantage is arm span. With a plan in mind, he changed his fighting style accordingly. The front jab controls the distance, and the back punch creates a threat. But the real killer is buried in the lower 3 roots. After continuous jabs, Hong Fan seized the moment when the opponent changed his center of gravity and swept and hit. Compared with the previous fight with Zhang Yao, which mainly attacked the thigh and knee, this time he used the calf kick. In terms of technique, the calf kick is not much different from the common low sweep, but it focuses on attacking the common peroneal nerve on the outside of the calf. As an important sensor hub of the human knee and leg joints, the common peroneal nerve innervates 42 calf muscles. When it is injured and numb, The human ankle joint will lose its response and cannot complete the dorsiflexion movement. This has a fatal impact on movement and leg force. Moreover, since there are fewer calf muscles, attacks on the common peroneal nerve are easy to be effective. After several rounds of attacks, Hong Fan was hit by 2 long fists and 4 kicks at the cost of a bruised cheek. "You call this good at boxing and kicking?" Hong Bo folded his arms and laughed in a voice that was neither too loud nor too soft. "Ali, your brother only uses this kind of trick to attack the legs, which is nothing more than relying on his long arms and legs to change the situation. What's the use? 2 Daos are seriously against 4 Daos. Brother Bo meets an opponent who is more powerful than him. Can he still go up and fight hard?" Hong Lai did not get angry, but said sarcastically. "Humph, if it were me, I might not be unable to fight hard." Hong Bo was stunned when he heard this. The muscles on his arms were tense, but he still refused to accept it. However, the spectators were unaware of the changes in the situation off the court. After being hit by 4 kicks on the same position of his left calf, Hong Yan obviously felt it difficult to move. The boxing he practiced pays special attention to the power from the ground and his solid stance. Without flexible legs and feet, how can he be swift? Seeing that his opponent was about to sweep low to his calf, Hong Yan was forced to change his stance and put his right leg in front. But just as his center of gravity changed, Hong Fan suddenly threw a straight punch, tricked his opponent into bending his arms, and then used a leg scissor throw. Hong Yan knew that his opponent was good at joint grabbing, and he wanted to get away in a hurry. But how can you prevent a fall without the ankle joint? With a scissor and a buckle of his legs, Hong Fan threw his opponent to the ground. Hong Yan followed his instincts and wanted to get up, but he was a little slow to pull his legs and his right ankle was grabbed. With his legs interlocked, Hong Fan's textbook heel hook stranglehold was formed instantly. Hong Yan lay on his back, unable to see the real situation under his feet. He felt as if a python was strangled in his lower body, blocking his movement. He knew it was powerful, and tried to kick his legs to get rid of it. At this moment, Hong Fan suddenly exerted force from his waist and abdomen, using himself as a lever to twist Hong Yan's knee joint horizontally. In just a moment, the sharp pain like needles and fire burned along the nerves to Hong Yan's mind. "I'm going to die. If I continue, my knee will break." At the critical moment, Hong Yan suddenly had an idea and hurriedly called for a stop. The situation turned around so quickly that it exceeded the expectations of everyone present. Even until Hong Yan admitted defeat, most people had not figured out what Hong Fan's move was. But victory or defeat is everything. In a flash, the title of the best at boxing and kicking in Zuyiki has changed. "I lost, Alice." Hong Yan stood up and bowed. He was not without resentment that his opponent did not play by the rules. But the dull pain between his knees forced him to give in. "Your lock and grab skills are really amazing. I have only heard of grappling with hands before, but I didn't expect that you could use your legs as well. They are just some small tricks that are not very useful," Hong Fan replied. He was not being modest on purpose. Even in the previous life, judo grounding skills had very high requirements for the environment and rules, not to mention that there is also true ki and true essence in this world. "Where did Brother Fan learn these skills from?" Hong Sheng asked with concern. "Brother, I have been practicing martial arts slowly for the past 2.5 years, so I figured out some unorthodox ways on my own," Hong Fan replied. "Now that I have made progress in martial arts, I don't plan to spend any more effort on it. You should focus on your physical strength." Hong Sheng nodded in approval and announced that the third newcomer Hong Fan won. Returning to the team, Hong Lai patted his cousin's shoulder affectionately, while Shen Hong and others cheered louder than the first team just now. In this battle, Hong Fan defeated the strong with the weak, which earned a lot of face for the third team. After the joining process was completed, Hong Sheng was the first to leave. All the teams disbanded, but Hong Ming left the third team alone. "I'm keeping you here today because I have a mission to tell you." He stood in front of the 11 people with his hands behind his back. "It's about sea flying." As soon as he said this, everyone's face became solemn. Sea flying is the largest group of sand bandits in the Jinhe Desert, with many bases and hundreds of followers. Hong Fan had heard that the red-clothed cavalry had lost a life in their hands when he was drinking with Zhang Yao and others. "The people we send out are back," Hong Ming whispered, slowly clenching his fists with his hands behind his back. Once Jingsha Gong left, Sea Flying was determined not to recognize the names of our 3 families anymore. "Soft tactics don't work, so we have to use hard tactics. P.S. I continue to have bloating tonight, and metoclopramide is useless. I can't sleep now, so I might as well update it first. People have all kinds of problems when they reach middle age. Even though they still have muscles and can deadlift and bench press 140 to 150 kilograms, they suffer from pain here and there, insomnia and bloating. It's difficult. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 Zulong. Our informant deliberately let He Shangfei get the message and know the route of the next wave of Qi family caravans. In 3 days, I will lead the team myself and wait for the opportunity. This time, the 3 families are sending people together. You, the Hong family, have the most hatred with He Shangfei, so I will choose you. Go back and be prepared. This time, there must be bloodshed. Hong Fan stepped on the blue bricks, and his mind once again turned over Hong Ming's lecture yesterday. The day after tomorrow, he will enter the Gobi Desert with a team and participate in the first real battle. The bow is already proficient, and the knife is also sharpened. But there is a great terror between life and death. It is impossible to say that he is not nervous. This is also the reason why he went to the instrument factory early this morning. Hong Fan entered the government office with a token in his hand and found Wen Hongwen. The latter was studying a copy of Taylor's formula at this time, and was overjoyed to see the original author coming. Master Hong, you are here. I have sent the original copy you wrote to the Zhejiang Grand Supervisory Office a few days ago. There will definitely be a response, Wen Hongwen said, and he came up and pulled Hong Fan's sleeve. But I still don't understand the respective functions of the remaining items you wrote. At this time, Jin Hong, who heard the noise next door, also hurried over. Hong Fan patiently solved the doubts of the two, and then he had time to talk about business. Master, I want to check some files this time. He knew that the Instrument Supervisory Office, as a scientific research community in Dahua, had the habit of recording everything. Mainly about martial arts and power, Hong Fan added. Files? Of course we have them in Jinhei, Wen Hongwen replied quickly. But our authority and manpower are limited, and the contents of the files are mainly related to local areas, not very complete. It doesn't matter, it's just a broad view, Hong Fan replied. He is now a genuine master craftsman, and it is his right to check the files, so Jin Huang immediately took him there. Although the archives of Jinhei Weaponry Bureau were incomplete according to Wen Hongwen, they filled 3 floors of rooms, and there were special people to prevent fire and repel insects. Hong Fan followed Jin Hong in and found that the archives were arranged according to the content, so it was not difficult to find them. However, there were only reports about martial arts, and there was no specific content of the skills. Jin Hong saw Hong Fan's face and knew that he was surprised, so he took the initiative to explain. We have people, money, and materials in the Weaponry Bureau. The 5 art saints are all of the 2nd rank, the same level as the ministers of various departments. With such power, it is taboo. He pointed upward. So archives can be collected in any aspect, but they cannot involve skills and martial arts resources. If you want to see this aspect, you have to go to the Zhangwu Academy. In the Weaponry Bureau, there is also a special skill called Xianji Dian. The practitioner has sharp ears and eyes, and the joints of the whole body move very sensitively and accurately. Drawing circles and squares with your hands is comparable to ordinary people's compasses and rulers. Jin Hong finished speaking and added. My master and I also practice this technique. Although the Xianji Classic is at the classic level, it is extremely difficult to reach the Yuanzi level. For ordinary geniuses, it is already the limit to cultivate to the Xianshan level. If we only talk about combat power, to be honest, it may not be comparable to the Yanliu Gong passed down in your family. Hong Fan nodded silently after listening. I will go and do my work. If you have anything, just tell the guards below. Jin Hong gave instructions and went downstairs. With the dim sunlight shining through the window, Hong Fan's eyes swept across the bookshelf and quickly found his target Jinhei Xingjin biography. Pulling out a book, he casually flipped through the previous dozen or so detailed records and went straight to the last person. Jingsha Xingjin, Ma Jingsha. This person has been in Jinhei for more than 10 years, and the records are relatively much more detailed than the previous ones. Ma Jingsha's real name is Unlucky. He was an old soldier who defended against giant spirits in the northern border. He only had the cultivation of Zhao Zhaoshan. When he was 58, He was given a life star by the dragon and changed his name to Jingsha. He came to Jinhe City 16 years ago. It is now the 27th year of Zheng, so he came here 11 years ago, Hong Fan whispered to himself. In 11 years, he reached the peak of the Xianshan realm from Xiaoshan. It's so fast, but what is this dragon gift? He continued to read. Jingsha's life star is the sand world, which can control the desert sand. The power of the Star King does not increase lifespan. There is no way to practice. Improvement depends entirely on understanding and fighting. Therefore, Jingsha chose Jinhe City as his home. In the 11 years, Jingsha's combat power increased rapidly. Every time he fought a big battle, he would gain more. There was a rumor in Jinhe that the life star could restrain souls. Life star does not increase lifespan? No wonder he died at the age of 69. It's better to practice martial arts, Hong Fan frowned, feeling a little uneasy. But power can actually be increased by killing. MD, how come it has some evil meaning? The content at the back is mostly about Jingsha's conquest experience, and there is nothing Hong Fan wants to know. After flipping through several bookshelves, he found another book, Records of the Gods. The book is very thin, but the content similar to legends in it is particularly shocking. The leader of all spirits is the Zulong. 1 year after the creation of the world, Zulong came from the sky. 3 years later, the morality of the sun and the moon was rectified, and the position of the gods was determined. Zulong was 1,000 feet long and golden. He taught martial arts, spread civilization, shared the world's property, and made mortals his descendants. The outstanding descendants became emperors, ministers, and noble families. Zulong was happy and contented after reshaping the world. He built a dragon palace on the imperial platform of Shenjing and liked to sleep forever. The occasional earthquake in Shenjing was all because of Zulong's turning over. What the hell? The Instrument Bureau also recorded such ancient legends. Hong Fan was confused, but he still read on. Among all the spirits, the one that most resembles the ancestor dragon is the nine-headed snake god. The nine-headed snake god lives in the far west of the world. His descendants all have long tails and are strong and cold-blooded. The difference between the snake gods begins with dragon blood. In the snake people, blood is the most respected. The sea dragon god lives in the South China Sea. His sea people tame sea beasts and ride the tides. They invade the southern part of Xianzhou all year round, and there must be a war every 100 years. The thousand-eyed demon god lives in the far east of the world, the heart-eating demon king. It's written quite realistically. After reading this, Hong Fan teased and suddenly found that his heart was beating very fast. Because the writing style in the Records of the Gods is very concise and realistic, and all the content that can be verified with reality or memory is not omitted, could it be that there are really dragons and gods in this world? Hong Fan flipped through the thin book in a few seconds, pulled open his collar, and his mouth was dry for a while. Yes, there are snake people, so it's not surprising to have a leading snake god? He put the Records of the Gods back and found another examination of fate stars. The content here is even more relevant. In the first year of the New World, after Zulong killed the thousand-eyed demon god, he lamented that the world was suffering from war and people's livelihood was in decline, so he granted 1,000 kinds of authority, called the Fate Star. The inheritance of the Fate Star depends entirely on talent and chance, regardless of time, place and person. Except Zulong, no one in the world can calculate the position of the Fate Star. Once the Fate Star selects a successor, the new Star Lord will have a continuous breakthrough in strength in a short period of time, which is called the Fate Star enters the position. The authority of the Fate Star is activated by the true essence, and those below the heaven and man interaction cannot sense it. P.S. There are more contents in the recent chapters, and this pass will speed up the pace again. In addition, please vote for recommendation. Chapter 43, Raising Chickens on a Different Planet. 1 year in the New World, according to the chronology of the book just mentioned, that is 200 years ago. Hong Fan compared it with the calendar and calculated the specific time. No wonder the earliest person recorded in the Records of the Golden Sea Star God was only 180 years ago. So, what is written there is true. He put down the Minxing KO and took out several books that might be related again, and browsed them one by one. A quarter of an hour later, Hong Fan threw the books aside and sat on the ground. The records of Dahua customs spread out beside him recorded it clearly. Every time the Dragon Calling Festival comes, the people of Shenjing are all looking forward to it. In 3 or 4 years, the Zulong will choose a response and swim out of the Dragon Palace among the lights. That night, millions of people can see the splendor, The last time I saw Zulong during the Dragon Calling Festival was the 24th year of Zheng, which was 3 years ago, Hong Fan muttered. So, there are really dragons and gods in this world. For a moment, the images of snake men with scales and yellow eyes, warriors who used true ki and burned wood with their palms, the legendary martial saints, gods, and the ancestor dragon all swirled in his mind. When his distracting thoughts gradually subsided, Hong Fan returned the book to its original place, and then he remembered that he had not checked the information about He Shangfei. But at this time, the leader of the Jinhe Sand Bandits, who had originally made him worried, could no longer cause any waves. He Shangfei, in the 22nd year of Zheng, it was founded by Wan Guangji, the spectral blade. In the 24th year of Zheng, Wan Guangji entered the realm of heaven and man. In the 25th year of Zheng, He Shangfei annexed the 3 groups of sand bandits, Sand Snake, Earth Dragon, and Pangolin. Below the leader, there were 3 people in the Hunran realm, more than 20 people in the Guantong realm, and more than 400 followers. In the 27th year of Zheng, He Shangfei occupied more than 15 desert supply points and had activities in all directions of the hundreds of miles of Jinhe Desert. The archives of He Shangfei were even simpler than expected. But Hong Fan had already obtained the most desired harvest. According to the cross-verification of multiple archives such as Mingxing Kao, he determined that the inheritance of Mingxing did not involve human beings. Even Zulong, the giver of power, never interfered. In this case, the Sand World can be exposed at any time, which is equivalent to increasing his apparent combat power by more than 1 time. After leaving the archives room, Hong Fan rubbed his face hard in an empty place and walked into the middle hall. Taking advantage of the conversation of flipping through the archives, he indirectly asked Wen Hongwen and Jin Hong, and calmly confirmed the core contents of Shenling Ji and Mingxing Kao again. According to the two, there were dozens of people in Zhejiang City alone who had seen Zulong in Shenzhen. Now, he could no longer believe it. Good, a 5-clawed golden dragon with a length of 1,000 feet, or from the sky. After leaving the weapon factory, Hong Fan walked on the side of the road with his head down, whispering to himself. I originally thought it was a feudal society, a pre-industrial age. Now, the imperial court has established diplomatic relations with aliens 2,000 years ago. After a circle, I have become a primitive man. He laughed at himself, using jokes to relieve the pressure bit by bit. Walking through the long street, the feeling of helplessness in Hong Fan's heart gradually receded. Instead, there was a strong sense of crisis buried underneath. The ability to rely on the fate star. The authority that grows through killing. The star god with a lifespan like that of ordinary people. The tradition of unified burial after death. So is this the savior who has mercy on the world and spreads his authority, or is it extraterrestrial life that has come from afar to raise chickens on a foreign planet? Hong Fan laughed softly. Out of the inspiration that there is a god above his head, he didn't say the last sentence. The star god's combat power increases rapidly, and there will be gains after every major battle. There was once a rumor in Jinhe that the fate star can restrain souls. Whether this is true or not, Hong Fan will be able to verify it in 2 days. 2 days later, August 12th. It was not yet daybreak. Hong Fan placed some manuscripts prepared in advance on various places on the bookshelf, and pressed a half-written paper on the desk with a paperweight. The content of the paper was L'Hôpital's rule. L'Hôpital's rule is a method of determining the value of an indeterminate form by taking the derivative of the numerator and denominator under certain conditions and then finding the limit. It was an important achievement in calculus at the end of the 17th century. Hong Fan had considered choosing it as the next paper. There was a saying in the previous life, 1 step ahead is a genius, 2 steps ahead is a madman. Although this saying is not completely correct, it is also very reasonable. In the field of mathematical physics, the time traveler certainly has many shocking results to output, but he must consider the foundation needed to make these results. If he accidentally built a castle in the air, the chief supervisor of the weapon workshop and the art saints would definitely find out. After breakfast, Hong Fan said goodbye to Aunt Liu, who could not hide her worry, and went out with a full set of equipment. At the beginning of the Chenchi, 7 a.m., everyone met at the West City Gate. Hong Ming led the team, and his 3 teams of 10 people came from the 3 major families. After the roll call, there were 33 people in total, and no one was late. Dozens of elite soldiers armed to the teeth and holding horse spears gathered together, making the entire West Gate particularly quiet. Not to mention the people passing by. Even the soldiers guarding the gate unconsciously lowered their voices, and most of them expressed their feelings with gestures. Seeing this, Hong Lai smiled, patted Shen Hong and Hong Fan on the shoulders, and motioned them to follow. The three of them first went to the city gate to chat with the soldiers and asked for a bucket of water. They also stopped an old man carrying a load who had just entered the city and bought a dozen hot pancakes. "This fresh pancake is good. If you still have room in your stomach, take it and try it." Hong Lai came back with the pancakes and quickly distributed them like smoke in the future. After more than a dozen pancakes were torn and eaten by the three elite soldiers, the passers-by seemed to confirm that these men in armor and with murderous auras were also made of flesh and blood, and regained their former vitality. "Please wait, gentlemen. The caravan has finished loading. It will take at most half an hour to get here." Not long after, a servant of the Chi family came running to report the news, and then set off again. After about 8 or 9 minutes, the caravan with 10 large carts as the core arrived at the west gate, and there were large flags with the word Chi on the front and rear vehicles. There were more than a dozen knights around the caravan, and the carts were pulled by a giant beast that was half cow and half camel, neutral, which Hong Fan had never seen before. The old man who led the team rode on a horse, exchanged glances with Hong Ming from a distance, and then led the team out of the city. After waiting for another incense stick, Hong Fan and others were ordered to mount their horses and set off solemnly in the fearful eyes of the crowd. When the city wall gradually became shorter behind them and there were no pedestrians on their sides, the more than 30 men on horseback relaxed their expressions and started to talk and laugh. After 3/4 of an hour of chatting, the green gradually faded and the gobi replaced the soil. The ground bulged upwards, and the road was cut off at the top of the barren hill. "We've arrived at the Golden Sea," Hong Lai said. "Where is it?" Hong Fan asked. "Underfoot," Shen Hong said with a smile, his legs lightly clamped around the horse's belly. Everyone rode their horses and stepped onto the top of the barren hill. The boundless sea of sand was right in front of them. Hong Fan looked over and saw a golden color without a trace of mixed colors suddenly hitting his eyes, stretching all the way to the sky. He reined in his horse, and his vision was filled with a blue sky and yellow earth. For a moment, he felt his body numb and couldn't speak. "Why, are you stupid?" Shen Hong said with a smile. He didn't know that the stream of memories in the heart of the time traveler was now passing through the high-rise buildings of the Magic City, the Great Wall, and the West Lake. Hong Fan had been to many places in his previous life, but he had never been to the desert. "If you haven't been to the Golden Sea, you can't say you are from the Golden Sea City." Hong Lai rode his horse closer and teased, "Shame on you, shame on you." After a long while, Hong Fan covered it up casually. "Fan, I just realized today that the mountains and rivers are so vast, they really are thousands of miles long." He laughed deliberately, rode his horse down the hill ahead of everyone else, quietly hiding the sadness in his eyes. Chapter 44, The Eagle Stands Like a Sleeper. The horses headed towards the west of the world. Half a day later, across 2 or 3 miles of gobi and sand dunes, Hong Fan's team was far behind the caravan. Jinhei separates Liangshao and Shezhou, and there are at least a dozen bandits in it. Shen Hong spit out the sand in his mouth, wrapped his face with a headscarf, and said, "Since the snake people were driven out of Jinhei, the bandits have never touched the caravans flying the flags of the 3 Jinhei companies in the past few years, and mainly attacked the counties and towns below. I don't know what kind of courage He Shangfei has eaten in the past few months," he said and pulled the scarf over his head. In late August in Jinhei, the sun was still hot during the day, and Shen Hong's bald head was hot. It is said that Liangshao wears fur coats in the morning and gauze in the afternoon. Compared with Jinhei, it is gentle. Sun Li pulled out his secondary water bag and took a sip, and said to Hong Fan. In the distance, the figure of his scouts on the top of the sand dune was fluctuating. Sunlight, dryness, strong wind. All this did not become a problem for Hong Fan. In his upper dantian, the true essence of the sand world circulated more freely than usual, as if he was at home. "You seem to be adapting well." Hong Lai drove his horse and rode with Hong Fan, looked at him and said, "From here, go west for half a day and then turn south. You can reach the heart of Shangzhou. In the past 2 years, the commercial tax of Huaiyang State has been rising. Thanks to this road, our Sistanch, Gobi Jade, and the production of salt lakes can be sold all the way to the south." Hong Fan nodded and looked at the caravan tracks that were gradually buried by the wind and sand. Through what he heard and saw, he extracted a lot of information from his inherited memory. Although it is a remote frontier, there are several salt lake fields in the southwest of Jinhei City, producing lake salt and mirabilite. The official mountain and sea policy of the court is a name only in this place where the emperor is far away. With the above-mentioned hard currency, the trade in the west of Liangzhou is extremely developed, and the Qi family is the leader that has risen from it. After a few more hours, it was getting dark. The heat absorbed by the yellow sand dissipated very quickly, and the men put on thick coats over their leather armor. At 6 p.m., the red-clothed riders arrived at the first oasis. The so-called oasis was actually a spring in the rock the size of a wash basin. The water in the spring was just enough for the horses to drink, and there were 2 sparse circles of sea buckthorn and thousand-year orchid outside, showing some green that was better than nothing. But it was the small piece of green in the yellow sand that made everyone particularly solemn. Regardless of whether they were men or horses, they were very careful when drinking water and wiping their faces, as if they were performing a solemn religious ceremony. We are now about 40 miles out of the city, Brother Hongfen. This is your first time here, you probably don't know. Shen Hong held a water bag filled with water in one hand, tore off half a pancake with the other, and sat down next to Hongfen. Hundreds of miles of golden sand sea, whether it's the snake people, the sand bandits, or us, the foundation of our territory and strength lies in such supply points. Hongfen nodded when he heard this. And words like water is the source of life came to his mind. But Hong Lai, who was sitting on the other side, smiled and said, "You haven't understood yet. Water can keep people alive, isn't that what you mean?" Hongfen asked. "It's not just that." Hong Lai tore off a piece of dry biscuit with his teeth and replied vaguely. "Only where people and horses can reach can we enclose the territory and talk about control. Cattle and camels can drink water once every 10 days, drinking hundreds of kilograms at a time, but these heavy-duty animals walk too slowly and can't do anything. So the sand bandits and we still have to use horses in the Gobi Desert, and horses need to drink dozens of kilograms of water at least every 2 days. Hearing this, Hongfen suddenly understood. The supply points in the sand sea are similar to gas stations, which determine the range of activities and even the routes of the horse team. What the captain meant is that although the desert is boundless, everyone's route is actually roughly fixed, and there are many places where cattle and camel teams can pass but horse teams can't, Hongfen said thoughtfully. Brother Hongfen is really smart, that's what he meant. Shen Hong slapped his thigh and laughed loudly. The sea robbers have to rely on horses to plunder as fast as they can, so even though the Golden Sea is vast, in fact, everyone has to travel along the designated routes, and once the caravan passes the area that the horse team can reach, the sand bandits are out of reach. I see. Hongfen swallowed the dry food and nodded. As Shen Hong said, if the sea robbers want to take action, they can only do it in the first 3 days, with the highest probability tomorrow afternoon. At this time, Hong Ming, who was inspecting the horses of the people, also walked near the few people and joined in. Different supply points can supply different sizes of troops. For example, in the entire southern part of Jinhe, there are only 4 large oases available for the army, and now they are all under the control of our Dahua. Of course, in addition to those public supply points, there are also secret ones. In this regard, the Qi family has the most accumulation, Hong Ming said, and gestured to the 10 people on the other side. The latter were the brave cavalry of the Qi family, who were wearing thin leather armor and cloaks, and were also eating dry food. Seeing the red-clothed cavalry and others looking in the direction, these men also nodded and greeted, feeling proud. There are 3 people in the pure realm flying on the sea. Every time they go out, there is at least 1 person leading the team, accompanied by 5 or 6 good players, and 20 or 30 minions. Hong Ming noticed that Hongfen listened carefully, so he spoke again. Our combat power this time is more than twice theirs, so you don't have to worry too much. Another hour passed. Hongfen checked Bentley's condition for the last time, turned around, and met Yin, who landed in the desert. Before his eyes, the night opened its arms and embraced everything. That night, the felt separated the extreme cold of the Golden Sea, and the dream was full of the taste of the unknown and adventure. The next day, the team set off again at dawn, and soon caught up with the caravan's tracks. However, the direction of travel changed from due west to due north, and the environment gradually changed from desert to Gobi. After lunch, as the possibility of conflict approached, Hongfan's heart was inevitably tense. Similarly, Shen Hong unconsciously stroked the handle of his horizontal sword, and Kong Hai's coat was put on and untied and put on again, as if the horse under his crotch was alternating between 2 seasons. They are also like this. It's not that I'm a coward. Hong Fan thought to himself, looking forward along the horse team. Hong Lai was lying on his back, resting his hands on his head, and looking at the only lonely cloud in the sky. Hong Ming, who was at the front, let his horse run freely, with his head down and dozing off. It seems too early? Hong Fan asked himself. Not long after, he and Shen Hong and others were also brought back to their senses and began to admire the jagged rocks in the Gobi Desert. The silent journey lasted until 2:30 p.m., 3:30 p.m. A whistling arrow shot up into the sky, and the sharp sound like an eagle's cry was carried by the wind for more than a mile and reached the ears of Hong Fan and others. This was the signal agreed upon by the scouts. "Brothers, it's time to work," a shout burst out. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound, and it was Hong Ming who was at the front. "Let's follow him." The bearded man turned his head and looked around at everyone in a moment, his eyes flashing. Where was the drowsy look before? Following the caravan's tracks, the horse team drove forward at half speed, and about 5 or 6 minutes later, they arrived at the scene in the valley. Chapter 45, Wang Buliuxing. Hong Fan held the reins and looked at the situation ahead. The valley was no more than 100 meters wide, with gentle slopes on both sides. The team with the chief family flag stopped in the center of the valley, and had already tied the carts with hemp ropes to form a circle, surrounding the camels, cattle, and horses. Outside the cart formation, 6 Sans bandit knights wearing light leather armor were dragging dust around in circles, and more than 20 dismounted minions with bows stood on the slope. Dozens of arrows were sparsely inserted on the cart formation, and 2 camels and cattle that were hit by arrows were wailing. The leader of the team that Hong Fan had seen before was standing on a cart at this time, negotiating with the leading sand bandits with difficulty. At this time, the sound of galloping horses and a thunderous roar came at the same time. "Yu Keicheng, your grandfather Hong Ming is here?" The people of the chief family in the cart formation cheered when they saw the reinforcements arrive. On the other side, the bandit leader of the Hunran realm named Yu Keicheng had a gloomy face and called his knights to retreat without hesitation. When the flying cavalry on the sea withdrew to the top of the slope, the cavalry was passing through the chariot formation, raising dust like a dragon. Hong Fan suppressed his rapid breathing and leaned over to touch Bentley's neck. His body was slightly hot and slightly sweaty. After jogging for 3 miles, the horses were still strong and well warmed up, which was very suitable for full-speed charging. This was exactly what Hong Ming was thinking. "Line up in a horizontal formation, brothers of the chief family, come up." He waved his horse spear to the sky and urged the horses to rush out. "The enemy is in front, follow me to kill." As soon as the voice fell, the remaining 32 cavalry immediately divided into 3 horizontal formations to follow, and the first row was exactly the 11 brave cavalry of the chief family. The sand bandits saw this and were slightly in turmoil. Seeing that the strength of both sides was clear, the 7 knights with martial arts skills sank into the back of the slope first, and only the 20 or so minions who had suffered a fatal blow occupied the high ground and blocked them with arrows. But how could the mere firepower stop the most elite cavalry formation in Jinhei City? In a round of more than 20 arrows, less than half of them hit the target, but they were immediately cut off by swords. Seeing the arrow's path clearly is common for a martial artist in the Guantong realm. Hong Fan cut off an arrow that hit his chest and heard a sound of metal clashing. It was the knights of the chief family in the front row who flicked away the sharp arrows with their bare hands. This move came from his family's martial arts, iron clothes kung fu. This skill takes into account both the inside and the outside. After practicing, the flesh and blood body becomes a steel pagoda, not afraid of ordinary soldiers. Because of this, Hong Ming named these 11 knights wearing only light armor to be in the front. The war horses galloped, and the distance of 60 meters passed in a flash. Everyone put their swords back into the sheath and pulled out the horse lances from the bird wing rings on the saddle. The horses climbed up the slope, the long lances were laid flat, and the battle was about to start. At the back of the formation, Hong Fan crouched with the horse lance between his legs, surrounded by the sound of horse hooves like war drums, and felt that all the emotions in his heart were fading away. Then, a sudden order interrupted his withdrawal. "Stop!" Hong Ming pulled the reins hard, and the horse under his crotch neighed and stood up. After him, dozens of riders slowed down and braked at the same time. If they were not all elite, they would have been injured. "Commander," the brave rider asked hurriedly. "No, it's not right." Hong Ming waved his spear to deflect 2 sparse feather arrows. "These minions are too calm." Hearing this, Hong Fan looked at the top of the slope and found that the bandits not only did not take advantage of the situation to intensify their offensive, but instead stopped their bows and arrows, showing a bit of confusion. Some who couldn't hold on, even unconsciously looked back at the back of the slope. "There is an ambush," Hong Ming made a judgment, ordered in a low voice, and turned his horse's head first. "It's the Hong family's fire Su Ming Wang, and he didn't catch you." A loud laugh came from the top of the gentle slope. Along the straight slope, two people came up first. The first one was the tall and thin bandit leader who had appeared before, and the second one was muscular and tall. At the side of the two men, more than 20 armored knights appeared, and around them were 50 to 60 bandits holding heavy bows. Including the previous bait, He Shangfei actually dispatched more than 100 people. Four-armed Yaksha Uk Cheng, broken steel Fang Xian Zong. Hong Lai put back his horse spear and said in his mouth with a solemn face. Hong Fan had seen these two names in the archives of the Weaponry Bureau. They were two of the three pure realms under Wang Guangji. With 30 against more than 100, we will not be a match. Hong Fan judged in his heart. When a warrior reaches the Guanchong realm, his combat power is equal to that of a tiger after being equipped with short weapons. In an ordinary street fight, even Zhang Yaod, who is at the bottom of the red-clothed cavalry, can easily defeat 5 gangsters at once. But if the latter are equipped with swords, spears, bows, crossbows and armor, the situation will be different. Retreat. Down the slope, Hong Ming ignored the provocation of the bandits and the panicked Qi family caravan, and rode away. The rear team became the front team. Just as the 33 people started, dense sounds of strings were heard from the slope. With their backs to the rain of arrows, it was several times more difficult for the knights to take care of their horses. 5 knights fell in one round of shooting. 4 more knights fell in the second round. Hong Fan, who was in the back row of the formation and happened to be fine, held his sword and turned his head to see the eyes of several knights who had stood up. Dust rolled, and no one stayed. The whistling wind tore through the sound of horse hoofs. Kong Hai, who was riding with Hong Fan, swung his lance and deflected an arrow from Bentley's butt. "Go, there's no way to save him," the man with 2 arrows stuck in his leather armor shouted. Hong Fan nodded silently and couldn't help looking back. He saw the first batch of knights who fell to the ground in the distance being nailed to the ground by arrows one after another. The last 2 roared and rushed up the slope, but the iron armor true key that was running to its peak only lasted for a few seconds before it was broken. On the gentle slope, the rain of arrows gathered, extinguishing the fire of life one by one. Thump. Hong Fan's blank thoughts were interrupted by the sudden sound of arrows. On his side, Kong Hai's warhorse was shot by an arrow and lost its hind leg. It was suddenly pulled down by the ground and fell out of the formation in an instant. At this time, the cavalry had already run 70 to 80 meters away from the gentle slope and survived 3 rounds of arrow rain. At this distance, the arrows of the minions were not accurate, but the sand bandit knights who were chasing on horseback were rushing up the slope. Kong Hai was a member of the red-clothed cavalry, and the knights of the Li and Qi families would certainly not turn back, because turning back is gambling with life. Hong Fan's mind flashed through his mind. In a flash, he had no time to think through the pros and cons, but he had already pulled the reins in his hand and stood on his horse with his sword. Hong Lai did the same thing with him. The two turned around and looked at each other, and they were a little surprised. "You save people, I cover," Hong Lai urged the black dragon under his crotch and waved his horse spear to block the sporadic arrows. Hong Fan did not hesitate, and drove the Bentley past Kong Hai and pulled him onto the horse's back. At the same time, many invisible and intangible things also crossed a distance of dozens of meters and were captured by the sand world. Sure enough, the power of the Star Lord can draw nutrients from killing. Hong Fan thought, and saw a black shadow approaching at high speed in his peripheral vision. He instinctively drew his sword close to his body, and heard a bang, as if a hammer hit his forearm. The iron arrow bounced off, leaving a dent on the blade of Wang Bu Liu Xing. In the distance, the burly Fang Xianzong put down his horse bow and looked surprised. Turning his horse's head, Zhuan Jiao and Bentley spread their hooves and ran at full speed. Chapter 46, One person forms a formation. "Brother, I owe you a life," Kong Hai, who had escaped death, panted in a low voice and pulled out the arrow stuck in his shoulder with his back hand. "Then you have to live well until I can collect the debt." Hong Fan squeezed the horse's belly hard, laughed heroically without looking back, and tried to put the horizontal sword back into the scabbard. Unfortunately, the horse was shaking, and he had to do this simple action 3 times before he could do it. In front, Hong Ming slightly slowed down and quickly welcomed Hong Fan and Hong Lai, who were chasing on horseback, back to the formation. At this point, there were only 21 and 22 riders left out of the 33 riders, and 7 or 8 of them were injured. The bandits on the gentle slope had been thrown to the horizon, but the 4-armed yaksha and more than 20 knights led by Doan Gang, who had the lowest level of Chongmei cultivation, were still chasing them. The 2 knight groups were separated by 30 or 40 meters, and continued to consume each other with bows and arrows. Kong Hai, who was sitting on the saddle backwards, chopped off several arrows with his 2 knives and saw that the arrows shot from his side were dodged by the chasing bandits. He then turned back and shouted to Hong Fan, "The enemy is strong and we are weak. Shoot the horse, not the person." Hong Fan was stunned when he heard this, and immediately understood. The speed of arrows shot by ordinary horse bows is limited, and shooting people can be easily dodged or bounced off by the inclination of armor, which makes the attacker more physically exhausted. But in a pursuit, shooting a horse will force the opponent to use his true energy. Hong Fan shot another arrow at the horse's leg, and this time he successfully forced the sand bandits to sweep with their guns. During the pursuit, they drove a few miles again. Kong Hai changed the horse that had lost its owner. But even if Hong Ming tried to contain it, there were only 18 people and 18 horses left among the 33 people. And He Shangfei, who was following closely, still had 23 people. At this time, both sides had used up their arrows and their true energy was exhausted. Yu Chang and Fang Xianzong looked at each other and knew that the time for a showdown had come. Riding their horses and waving their whips, the sand bandits began to close the distance. But they were not the only ones waiting for an opportunity to break the deadlock. Hong Fan drew his horse lance and adjusted his breathing. Strength filled his already exhausted arms again. His Yanlu Jin had been used up long ago. What was flowing through his meridians at this moment was the life star essence that was intact. "Commander, what should we do?" Hong Lai glanced behind him and asked in a low voice. Everyone knew that running away was not a solution. The choice before everyone was, first, to fight to the death, and second, to cut off the tail and survive. Normally, this was not a difficult choice. The lives of the bandits were cheap. Not to mention the sons of powerful families, even if they were exchanged for children of good families, it would not be worth it. But for this team of 3 merged families, the second choice was much more difficult than the first. Hong Ming looked back at everyone and saw blood in every pair of eyes. 3 families, he gritted his teeth and was about to make a decision, but he saw Hong Fan, who was at the end, suddenly reined in his horse and turned around. "I will defeat the enemy." The angry shout was loud, like a wolf's smoke. Hong Lai, Shen Hong, Kong Hai and others looked back and saw that the young knight who had just joined the team had already put down his long lance and kicked the horse's belly fiercely. Bentley felt the pain, foaming at the corners of his mouth as he sped up desperately. On the Gobi Desert, one man went against the flow, and the horses formed a formation. Even his comrades did not react. "How can I bear it if the boy is like this?" Hong Ming's eyes were bloodshot, and his blood-stained beard trembled continuously, like a condensed flame. "All of you go, don't worry about me." Huaxu Mingwang drew his sword and rode, threw down 8 words and turned around to chase. On the other side, the mocking voices in the sand bandits were fierce. "Stupid man who wants to die, don't know whether to live or die." But Hong Fan only felt that the blood in his body was burning, and his thighs could not stop trembling. Hormones were secreted, and his pupils condensed. Surrounded by smoke and dust, he laughed loudly. "The desert is ruthless, don't blame me." 50 meters, 40 meters, 30 meters. Hong Fan leaned forward, and the riding skills he learned from Hong Lai and Kong Hai for more than 2 months slowly flowed through his mind. Compared with a long spear, the horse lance is hard and long. Without stabbing, its huge double-edged blade can inflict fatal injuries with the speed of the horse. The living hand holds the gun, the dead hand holds the lance. Hong Fan aimed at the enemy and held the center line firmly. Sand fog was activated. From Bentley's feet, the desert sand rolled like waves, instantly submerging the area of more than 10 meters around him. The wind and sand entered the battle array before the boy, plunging the world of the sand bandits into darkness. The blades met. The sand bandit who rushed to the front of the Guantong realm was suddenly blinded, and in panic, he swung a blank shot. Then, he was pierced straight into the heart by the long lance. "One horse," Hong Fan roared in a deep voice, holding the lance tightly. The long pole was slightly bent, and the lifeless body was ejected from the horse's back. The desert sand was stained with blood, and the wind was even stronger. Twisting his waist and winding the lance, Hong Fan threw the dead body off the blade, and then used the over-shoulder blade of the crescent-shaped knife. The lance was wrapped around the neck, and the majestic wind spread like a tide. The second bandit in the Guantong realm heard the noise and tried to stop him with his spear, but was deceived by the chaotic sand's flow. With a sharp sound of armor breaking, the spear blade broke through the sternum and penetrated the torso, and the tip of the blade broke out from the back. Two riders, Hong Fan shouted loudly and twisted his wrist. The long blade turned 90 degrees horizontally on the bandit's chest and broke out from the side, stirring a large mass of flesh and bones into the air. At this time, the third bandit approached following the sound and silently cut diagonally with his knife. But the dancing gravel faithfully conveyed all the information to the master. Hong Fan raised his horse spear to his left shoulder, held the scimitar, and grabbed a sand sword in the air with his left hand. When he passed by, he stabbed it into the opponent's femoral artery. A fountain of blood mixed with a collapsing sand spurted out. Three riders, taking advantage of the clear front, Hong Fan turned his hand back and exerted strength, shaping 4 sand spikes between his 5 fingers, and threw them with a flick of his wrist. Under the cover of the rolling sand, 2 of the 4 targets with lower cultivation were hit, with cuts on their arms and legs. The horses were running and staggered. In silence, the sand spread inward along their blood vessels. The sand thorns are not poisonous, but in this Jinhe where there is a lack of medical care and medicine, wound infection is more poisonous than anything else. Fourth rider, 5 riders, Hong Fan roared and completely immersed himself in the enemy formation. "You are so arrogant, come and die." The next person who rushed over following the sound was the 4th leader of the sea flying, Yu Kei-cheng. He held a scimitar and slashed at high speed. The 2 meridians of Hunrin confronted the 2 main meridians. If Hong Fan could counter the opponent's moves, he would not be able to keep up with the opponent's movements. But the sand that had been attached to his body in advance could. Just like countless times in training, the desert sand instantly solidified into a shield in the master's belly. The blade chopped and smashed the sand shield, cutting the fish scale skin armor in half. He fainted with a dull pain in his stomach, but Hong Fan seized the opportunity. He used the sand fog to cover himself, turned sideways, and when the 2 sides were far apart, he chased back with a spear, slashing the hind leg of Yu Kei-cheng's mount. The 6th rider. Hong Fan breaks the formation here, in the sand fog. A high-pitched long roar and a voice of shock and anger rose at the same time. Sand world, just now, the 4-armed yaksha, who was confident that he would kill, split the sand fog with his scimitar, and in a glimpse, he saw the last thing that blocked him. It was the living sand that once brought him endless fear. The sand fog dissipated, and Hong Fan had already ridden through the enemy formation. The 4-armed yaksha, who had lost his mount, had a flash of light in his eyes. After 2 steps of stepping on the sand, he stood up and jumped onto the empty horse in front of him. Just in front of him was Hong Ming and several red-clothed knights who were rushing in the opposite direction. Star Lord enters the formation. "We retreat." After leaving a word, the 4-armed yaksha turned his horse and fled. Seeing that the leader was like this, the exhausted sand bandits saw that they were about to be attacked from both sides, and their morale collapsed, and they fled. Among the dozen people, only Fang Xianzong wanted to fight again with his sword. But seeing that everyone else was leaving, Broken Steel had no choice but to follow. P.S. Please vote. Chapter 47, Scapegoat. At 6 p.m., it was already half dark. The broken mountains and cliffs on all sides of the Gobi Desert looked like giants in black robes, silently watching the silent march of the survivors. Not long after, the team led by Hong Ming arrived at the nearest supply point. Beside the spring, everyone fetched drinking water and spoke little. After everyone washed their faces and watered their horses in turn, the injured knights began to clean and bandage their wounds. Hong Fan tied Bentley to a broken poplar tree, first fed him bean cakes mixed with eggs, and then massaged the trembling muscle fibers on the horse's legs for a while. When the warhorse snorted and relaxed, he took the dry food from Kong Hai, who was waiting beside him, and sat down by the campfire to eat. The losses in today's battle were heavy, including Hong Ming. There were 18 people left in the team. Among them, there were 9 from the Hong family, 5 from the Li family, and 4 from the Qi family. Relatively speaking, the Red Cavalry suffered the least losses. This was because Hong Ming took care of them more, and secondly, The Red Cavalry formation was further back when they were ambushed. In Hong Fan's view, there is no absolute fairness in the world, and there is nothing to blame too much. He bit off a piece of dry biscuit, chewed it with his mouth closed, waiting for the saliva to moisten it, and entered the introspective perspective at the same time. The golden dragon soul tree appeared in front of him, swaying without wind. Under the tree, the semi-illusory mist was condensed into a ball, and was turning into golden streamers little by little, and was drawn into the tree by the roots. This is probably the legacy of the deceased. Hong Fan reviewed the battle situation in his mind. A total of 15 people from the 3 families of Jinhe died in the battle, and the loss of He Shangfei was 13. Of course, this does not count the Qi family caravan that must have been captured by all members. Looking back on the whole process, Hong Fan had a clear conscience and believed that he had done his best. But the lives of his comrades were like mountains, and many people had already been suffocated. When the Zhuaiki people began to eat one after another, several people from the Li family and the Qi family were still sitting still, and even feeding the horses was very hasty. When Hong Fan ate half a biscuit, these people finally couldn't hold back their temper, and came in groups after untied their swords. "Brother Hong Fan, we have something to say," the leading man from the Qi family stood by the campfire and said. "You used the sand world to charge before," he asked in a statement tone. "This is a topic that everyone cares about." "Yes," Hong Fan admitted it naturally. "Soon after seeing off Jingsha Star Lord, I gradually discovered that I could control the sand, and then speculated that I inherited the life star." The man from the Qi family nodded slowly, but his face became more tense. Although the title of Longxi Star Lord is not taken seriously by noble families who are also blood descendants of the ancestor dragon, it is still somewhat sacred among the people. As for the elites present, everyone has seen Ma Jingsha when he was alive and knows the dominance of the sand world in the hundreds of miles of golden sand sea. But it is precisely because of this that they are more hesitant and angry. The inheritance of the Star Lords should be cautious. Today's incident happened suddenly. It doesn't matter if you didn't say it earlier, the man from the Qi family continued. But since you have the power to control the sand, why didn't you take action early after everyone was ambushed and save more lives, he whispered, and although he tried to suppress his voice, he couldn't help but questioning. After he said this, not only the 9 people from the Qi and Li families, but also many people from the Zhuai cavalry looked at him. But Hong Fan's face remained normal. "Because I can't save them," he replied, just shaking his head slowly. "After charging into the battle alone, I was actually exhausted." Hong Fan took off his leather armor and opened his cloth robe. His exposed lower abdomen was actually a large area of horrifying purple. Hong Fan sighed and said. "I was hit by the sword of the 4-armed Yaksha. Even though I defended with all my strength at that time, I still broke 2 ribs." He lowered his head and laughed, and there was a sound of gnashing teeth in his laughter. "I endured for a long time, and waited until their true energy was exhausted, and then I attacked them with leisure. However, I killed and injured 30% of them, and I still relied on the remaining power of Jingsha Star Lord to scare them away." Hong Fan shook his head and raised his eyes to look directly at the questioner from the Qi family. "If we attack when we are ambushed, I may be able to kill 2 or 3 people with all my strength, but it will not help the overall situation. How can there be only 2 or 3 people?" A man from the Li family stepped forward and interrupted in a hurry. "Did you use the sand fog trick? If we attack when we have spare energy, my sand fog can recognize me, but it can't recognize you," Hong Fan interrupted coldly. The other party was immediately speechless. "I have done everything I can," Hong Fan covered his clothes and said indifferently. "If you still have anger in your hearts, you might as well think more about why the news of our action was leaked, and we were ambushed in turn." This is a very reasonable statement, but it unexpectedly aroused the other party's anger. "Brother, what do you mean by this?" the man from the Qi family said angrily. "Do you think that my Qi family leaked the news?" Hong Fan just ate the cake with big mouthfuls. He naturally didn't respond to such nonsense and meaningless words. However, when the other party saw that he was silent, he still stiffened his neck and refused to leave. After a few breaths of dead silence, a harsh creaking sound rang out from the side. Hong Ming, who was silent, suddenly took out a whetstone and began to sharpen his sword. The noise was like an order. Hong Lai, Kong Hai, Shen Hong and others stood up one after another, untied their swords and surrounded them, hiding Hong Fan behind them. "I've been listening for a long time, but I don't understand what you are arguing about." Kong Hai smiled and crossed his arms. He had taken off his armor at this time, and his strong shoulders were bandaged with blood. TNND, I was shot and fell off my horse. Who turned back? Who risked his life to save me? Where were you at that time? Kong Hai said and took another half step forward. You watched me die without saving me, so how dare you say anything about whether Brother Hong Fan helped or not and when he helped? When this question came out, the chests of the Chi and Li families rose and fell. They wanted to retaliate, but the words were stuck on their lips and they couldn't get them out. Being ridiculed, I was angry, but I also felt guilty for the dead. At the stalemate, Hong Fan slowly stood up. 15 people, we lost 15 people in this battle. Holding his teammates' shoulders, he stood in front of the Chi family man. One by one, my comrades were shot and fell off their horses, and died in the swords. Why didn't you fight back? No one answered his words. You don't need to say it, it's just that I couldn't save them at the beginning, and later I was powerless, Hong Fan asked himself and answered. Then he sneered. At that time, the enemy cavalry drove us away, and we were powerless to perish together. Now they have flown away in the sea. You still have the energy to talk to me. The 3 sentences swirled in the camp, and soon they turned away from the campfire and walked away into the darkness. No one spoke, and even the sound of sharpening knives stopped. There was only the crackling of the campfire and the heavy breathing of several people. Forget it, forget it. Hong Fan's eyes swept over everyone in front of him one by one. If I take Hong Fan as a scapegoat, it will make you feel better, but please do as you please. He laughed softly and turned around to sit down by the campfire. The knights of the Chi and Li families finally lost their temper and went away, hiding their faces in the shadows where the firelight could not reach. P.S. New readers are welcome to read my old book The Apostle of the End. My level was quite different when I first started the old book and when I finished it. There are many problems with the first 2 volumes now. From the middle and later parts of the 3rd volume, my level has improved significantly. Chapter 48, Aftermath. August 15th, afternoon. After 2 days of traveling, Hong Fan and his team finally crossed the desert and saw the outline of the city wall again. As they approached the city, people gradually appeared on the road. Hong Fan looked from afar and saw that the city gate was bustling as usual. Jinhei did not have a festival called Mid-Autumn Festival, so today was no different from the rest of August. But the bloody cavalry changed everything. To the people in the city, the noise outside the city gate was almost suddenly extinguished. Inside the gate, the people waiting for the random inspection by the city defense department looked forward curiously, but were driven to the side by the serious-looking soldiers guarding the city. Then, they saw 18 exhausted knights enter the city in a line, with fresh blood on their armor. Silence was like ink spreading in water, quickly covering the city gate that was just full of life. These were the elite of the 3 families of Jinhei, and everyone in the city, young and old, recognized them. But no one had seen them so embarrassed for a long time. The team went turning street, and everyone dismounted from their horses, starting with Hong Ming. At this moment, Hong Fan suddenly felt something in his heart. On the spiritual platform, the branches and leaves of the dragon soul tree, which had always been stable, shook and all turned in the same direction. Following this inspiration, Hong Fan raised his head slightly and vaguely saw 2 figures behind the 3rd-floor window on the street. Someone is spying. He thought about it and was about to explore again, but saw a figure flash and then lost the sense. From beginning to end, except for him, even Hong Ming did not notice it in the team. Soon, the team reached the next intersection. The 18 people were divided into 3 groups and simply bowed, then each dispersed and returned. After returning to the mansion and storing the horses, Hong Ming first arranged a doctor for the injured brother, and then took Hong Lai to report to the clan. When Hong Fan returned to the small courtyard, Aunt Liu, who was sitting in the courtyard, was naturally overjoyed and immediately took out her purse to prepare food. A night passed. Hong Fan slept until the sun was high in the sky, and did not leave the courtyard after dinner, but just sat quietly in the room. He was waiting for the aftermath of the incident. Having lived 2 lives, Hong Fan has always been a person who plans before acting. The identity of the Star Lord involves a wide range of people, and once it is exposed, there will inevitably be an impact that cannot be calculated based on the archives. Hong Fan wanted to re-evaluate his position and value through the reactions of others. Soon, the first level of feedback came. At around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Aunt Liu ran back to the yard with a box in her hand, and the first thing she did was to close the gate. The butler forced it on me, saying that it was the interest on the money the young master borrowed last time. She opened the box on the stone table, and inside were 20 neatly arranged 5 silver ingots. I asked why the interest was so high, but he blamed me for being too talkative. Aunt Liu said softly, still a little confused. She knew nothing about her young master's mission experience and the specific injuries he suffered. Seeking virtue, you dare to give and take. Hong Fan picked up a piece of silver, squeezed it, and smiled. After being the butler for so many years, no wonder he is still standing firm. To his surprise, the one who reacted the fastest among the hundreds of people in the Hong mansion was actually a servant. After receiving the silver, Hong Fan returned to his room and wrote another letter to Wen Hongwen, saying that he was injured and could not go out, and talked about the matter of the Sand World. In this way, the Jinhe weapons supervisor would not have unnecessary worries. August 16th passed in peace. On the next day, the matter in the desert finally fermented thoroughly. Not only the major families, but also the streets and alleys were busy with two things. The first was that the cavalry of the three families of Hong, Li, and Shi suffered heavy losses in the sea flying hands, and lost 15 Guantong realm at one time. This was a shock to the entire Jinhe city, and the reputation of Hong Ming, the fire Su Ming Wang who is responsible for this operation, was also greatly damaged. The second thing was that the life-star Sand World of Jingsha Xingjin remained in Jinhe, and the chosen heir was a young son of the Hong family. There was less information about this matter, but the impact was more far-reaching. Let's start with the small things. In just one morning, the small courtyard at the corner of the Hong mansion received 7 or 8 groups of people from various families. They all heard the news and wanted to make some connections for their younger generations. Hong Fan avoided this kind of bullshit by saying that he was injured. But Aunt Liu stayed at the gate of the courtyard and chatted with some elders who had never interacted with her for several hours, and finally received several baskets of vegetables, meat and eggs. By the evening, she had heard the outline of what her young master had experienced from different mouths. She was more worried than happy, and tossed and turned until dawn. Aunt Liu, who couldn't read, didn't know the special power. But as a Jinhe person, she knew that every battle with the snake people in the past 10 years had the name of the old star god. A wall separated Hong Fan, who also stayed awake all night. In his meridians, the flaming qi circulated at an unprecedented speed, and finally condensed into the Shao and Heart meridian, opening up the 4 major acupoints of Tongli, Yingxi, Shenmen, and Shaofu. At the beginning of the yin hour, 3 a.m., Hong Fan opened up the last Shaochong acupoint, completely penetrating the 3rd meridian. But the misty clouds under the roots of the dragon soul tree had not yet been exhausted. When it was bright, the high-speed qi finally slowed down and stopped at the 6th acupoint of the Yangming large intestine meridian of the hand, Pianli. At this point, the 4th meridian was also broken by half. In the early morning of August 18th, smoke rose from the courtyard. The two people, who were tired for different reasons, had breakfast together, and then went back to their rooms to catch up on sleep. This sleep lasted until the afternoon, until they were awakened by Chiuda who came to the door. Master Fan, the clan leader wants to see you, the housekeeper bowed slightly and said. This was something Hong Fan had been waiting for a long time. As the saying goes, if you don't plan for the whole, you can't plan for a single area. He needed to use this to confirm some conjectures. Crossing the corridor, Hong Fan came to Hong Jian's study. As soon as he entered the room, he smelled a deep and fragrant medicinal fragrance, and the blood in his body immediately reacted. This must be a martial arts resource that is much higher than the blood-inducing fragrance. Hong Fan turned around the entrance and saw 3 people sitting at the tea table. The old man on the left had gray hair and beard, sitting upright, holding tea and holding a cup like a ritual vessel. The middle-aged man in the middle was dressed in a red robe, with a solemn face, and his eyes were as deep as a mountain. The man on the right was of medium height and relatively young. His eyebrows and eyes concealed a sword and halberd, and his power was the most significant. Hong Fan recognized all 3 people, namely Hong Li, Hong Jian, and Hong Wu, who were the 3 with the highest strength and status in the mansion. Meet the clan leader, uncle, and uncle. Hong Fan bowed and saluted, and sat down on the opposite side of the tea table following Hong Li's gesture. This was the first time he had met Hong Jian in private. In the inherited memories, his mother died early due to illness. His eldest wife had always been a hindrance, but his father had never visited him. How could the replaced Hong Fan not feel resentful about this? It's just that things have changed, and the time traveler has turned all this into indifference. In the quiet room, the aroma of tea and medicine entangled and mixed. The first to speak was Hong Li. I asked Hong Ming and Hong Lai about the situation this time. He picked up the teapot with 2 fingers and washed the cup and poured tea for Hong Fan. If it weren't for your bold planning, I'm afraid few people would have come back alive. This is a great achievement, Hong Li said, looking at his disciple with emotion in his eyes. I called you here today, one is to reward you, and the other is to confirm something important. As he said, his face became serious. Hong Ming said that you inherited the Life Star. This matter is no trivial matter. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49, Testing. I don't know much about the power of the Life Star, Hong Fan replied. But after seeing off the god of shocking sand, I did suddenly have the ability to control the sand. As soon as he said this, he noticed that Hong Wu and Hong Li were both slightly tense. As the saying goes, hearing is false, seeing is believing. Is this pot of flowers important? Hong Fan's eyes swept around and finally landed on a pot of yellow flowers by the window. Hong Jian understood what he meant and replied, you can do whatever you want. It's just an ordinary bonsai transplanted from the garden, okay? The 3 heard Hong Fan's soft response and stretched out their hands in the air. The flower pot 2 meters away trembled instantly. Under the yellow flowers and green leaves, the moist soil quickly dehydrated and turned into sand, separating all the humus and floating in the air. When Hong Fan clenched his 5 fingers, the ball of new sand was taken in from the air and swirled above his palm into a ball. Sure enough, it's really the world of sand? Hong Li witnessed this familiar magical power with his own eyes and kept muttering. Even the most reserved Hong Jian sighed at this time, with some nostalgia in his eyes. After the 3 elders confirmed that there was no doubt, Hong Fan pushed the sand ball and it rolled back silently into the basin, without any mess. Great, great, Zulong is very kind to my Hong family. Hong Wu slapped his thigh, and was overjoyed at first, but then showed a trace of fear. Such a big thing, why didn't you tell me earlier, nephew? If those sea flies succeed in entering the Golden Sea this time, it would be. Hearing Hong Wu's words, Hong Li's face also tightened. I heard that you often went out of the city to practice in the mountains alone before. He frowned and asked, with a little blame. Replying to uncle, I didn't say it before, not because I intended to conceal it, Hong Fan bowed and replied. It's just that this ability to control sand was extremely weak when I first got it, and I couldn't determine where it came from. I just thought there was something wrong, so I dared to get familiar with it secretly first. As for going out of the city to practice, first, I dare not show the sand world to others, and second, my appetite is getting bigger and bigger. Going to the mountains to practice can also help me hunt and save money. Most of the content of these few words is true and sincere, but the key motive is a little vague, so Hong Fan said it especially sincerely. The study was silent again. Before deciding to summon Hong Fan, the leaders of the Hong family had of course re-understood this junior from many aspects. So they knew that the hunting and saving money in his words were all true. There were even more truths that the young man could have said and should have said, but he didn't take the opportunity to say them. This is exactly the scale that Hong Fan wants to measure. Alice, you are so cautious at such a young age, it shows that you have suffered a lot. Hong Wu clenched his fists and sighed. He is the city judge of Jinhei City, responsible for criminal investigation and catching thieves, and his observation ability has always been extraordinary. From the way Hong Fan addressed Hong Jian as clan leader when he first met him, to the way he addressed himself as I instead of his generational name when he met the 3 elders, he had already made a judgment in his mind. When something abnormal happened to the younger generation in the family, the first thing he thought of was not to report it to his elders, but to choose to take it all on his own. This is our fault, Hong Wu looked up and said to his brother, and the we was obviously referring to something. On the other side, Hong Li also frowned. Hong Jian nodded heavily upon hearing this and said, this is my fault. His voice was still rough, but it was much less bloody than the time when he was celebrating the victory. After hearing his words, Hong Li and Hong Wu's faces calmed down immediately. Feiner, have you noticed any changes since you came back this time? Hong Jian asked again after admitting his mistake frankly. His tone was flat, and there was no difference in the intimacy between a father and his son in his address. Hong Fan knew what the other party was asking, and replied truthfully, since I came back, My combat power has increased, and I have broken through another level of the meridians compared to before I set out." After hearing this, the three exchanged glances, each of them excited. That's right, it was the same with Jingsha Gong in the past. Hong Wu clenched his fist and hit his palm, saying anxiously, "This time, it can be regarded as a blessing in disguise." He raised his cup and drank the tea in one gulp, then looked at Hong Fan. "Since you brought the news back, the three families have been investigating separately, and they caught the traitor last night. The Chi family is working in the caravan. He exchanged the news of our operation for 200 taels of silver. Our people were a step late, so the damn guy was hanged, and finally he couldn't be saved. He got it for free." Hong Wu slapped the armrest heavily. He said this very formally, not entirely an explanation from an elder to a younger generation, but rather like giving an explanation. Hong Fan nodded, but the three of them could see the unfinished meaning between his eyebrows. "Hong Fan, if you have any questions, just ask boldly. Our Hong family can still cover things in Jinhei." Hong Li poured out the cold tea in front of the young man and replaced it with fresh tea, saying lightly, "Is it a feud with Li Xingfa and Qi Yinglang?" The Li Xingfa and Qi Yinglang mentioned by the old man were the two knights who attacked Hong Fan when he returned to the city. "No, they were just sad and out of control because they lost their comrades." "How can it be called a feud?" Hong Fan shook his head first, then asked. "We in Liang's How have been fighting with the snake people for thousands of years, and there are blood debts. Now that the old Star King has passed away, don't the snake people have any reaction?" This question was beyond the expectations of everyone in the study. Even Hong Li could not have imagined that this disciple who had just graduated from the clan school would actually focus on this. "Nephew, don't worry," Hong Wu smiled and replied. "A few years ago, the Star King Jingsha went deep into the snake swamp, and those border settlements were broken. Now they are in civil strife, and 5 or 6 clans are on the verge of war. Judging from the current situation, there will be no threat in 3 to 5 years." His original intention was to reassure his nephew. But he did not expect Hong Fan to verify his conjecture and asked again. "So our three families have always had news from the snake people?" This question was based on inherited memories. The several barriers between the snake people and the Dahua people were known to all men, women, and children in the border areas of Liang's How. The first barrier was the Jinhei Desert, and the second was language. Due to the vocal organs, the snake people and the human race could not learn each other's language, unless they were blood nobles among the snake people, or middle and high-level warriors among the human race. Hong Fan's question not only silenced the three elders again, but also slightly changed their condescending attitude. "The fate star is in place, it seems that it has been selected," Hong Wu sighed, surprised by the sharpness of the younger generation. "Brother, my nephew is a needle in a bag, but the end is immediately visible." On the other side, Hong Li also shook his head and laughed, raised his eyebrows, and signaled the boy not to let the second cup of tea he poured get cold. Seeing Hong Fan finish the tea in one gulp, he said, "What do you want to ask? Just say it directly. Do we have trade with the snake people?" Hong Fan lowered his voice and finally asked the key question. "Does the court know? Hit the target with one arrow." The room was silent. Hong Wu drank tea from the cup, looking embarrassed. He was the one who had just spoken. According to convention, the three elders should have rebuked him with a sentence, "It's not your concern." But Hong Fan was no one else. He was the star god bestowed by Zulong to the Huang family, and he showed a mentality that was obviously beyond his age. After a moment, Hong Jian broke the silence. Chapter 50, Drawing Inferences from One Example. "We and Jinhei are trading with the snake people. The Qi family is doing it, but we and the Li family have both participated and contributed." Hong Jian looked at his son and said slowly. Hong Fan nodded when he heard this, his face as calm as a lake. Now the three were even more surprised at his calmness. They thought they would see a more intense reaction, such as a rage, the so-called youthful spirit. Hong Fan was at an age where he could not tolerate any grain of sand in his eyes. "This is indeed a taboo of the court." After a pause, Hong Wu continued to explain. "But compared with our own blood feud with the snake people, what are the intentions of those nobles in the court?" He sneered. "In the past few years, we have mainly sold ironware and cloth, of course not weapons, mainly various tools, ritual vessels for sacrifices, and silk and cotton clothes. The snake people attach great importance to blood sacrifices, and the prices of these things are very high there." After opening the topic, Hong Wu simply revealed everything. Snake people don't have the technology to smelt iron or weave, Hong Fan asked immediately. What he thought of at this time was the nine-headed snake god in the archives. It is ridiculous that the so-called most like Zulong god among all spirits, whose clans have fought against humans for many years, cannot weave or forge iron. Well, it's not a technical problem, Hong Wu replied, getting a little used to his nephew's speed of learning from one thing. Ordinary snake people are similar to the reptiles here. They are all cold-blooded, they can't tolerate heat or cold, and they have to find a cool place to hibernate when the temperature is high, so they can't do the work of burning furnaces and forging iron. As for weaving, it is more due to geographical reasons. The deeper you go into the northwest of Jinhei, the more swampy miasma it is, and mulberry and hemp can't grow. Hong Wu had entered the territory of the snake people many times with his brother and Ma Jingsha, and the information mentioned in the words was confirmed by him personally. Hong Fan suddenly realized, Brother Fan, the clan actually has no choice but to do this. At this time, Hong Li, who had been brewing for a long time, interrupted. When Lord Jingsha was still alive a few years ago, our Jinhei was like boiling oil in a raging fire. But under the high momentum, each family actually suffered heavy losses. The elders of my generation and your father's generation either died in Jinhei or died in the snake swamp, and many of them could not even bring back their bodies. He stopped here and coughed several times, his back bent. After a few breaths, the old man straightened his back again and added, Of course, the blood shed by the snake people will be far more than ours. After drinking a cup of hot tea, Hong Li calmed down a little and continued to speak. Later, the trade route of Huaiyang state was cut off again, and the situation of our three families became worse and worse. It was not until the Chi family opened a trade route to the north that the vitality of Jinhei City was slowly restored by the leather, medicinal materials, and snake gall from there. Otherwise, when you entered school, the clan might not even be able to issue to a gongwen. Snake people sell snake gall. What a hell joke. This was the first thought that came to Hong Fan's mind. But under the gaze of the elders, he just breathed a sigh of relief and replied, Thank you elders for tolerating my transgression. I understand. In the study, the slightly stiff atmosphere quickly softened. Hong Fan had two main purposes for this summons. The first was to increase his weight on the basis of the sand world. The second was to test the relationship between the three families and the snake people. In the past 6 months, his practice has gradually been on the right track, and his relationship with the Weaponry Bureau has become increasingly solid, which is equivalent to entering a period of rapid development. What Hong Fan least wants to see at this time is uncertainty. If the Hong family is in contact with foreigners and is willing to risk the world's disapproval, he should have prepared a way out. Fortunately, it seems that the situation in Jinhei City is roughly similar to the private smuggling between the northern Song dynasty and the western Xia in the previous life. Obviously, both sides have fought their brains out, but with the official tacit approval, the former still buys war horses from the latter, and the latter buys armor from the former. You are calm, but you have too many things in your mind, Hong Li scolded half-jokingly. We are still in the clan, it's not your turn to worry about it. Now there is only one thing in front of us, to fight back against Hai Fei. I am arranging this matter with the two families, but they are a little emotional, Hong Wu said. It is normal to have emotions, Hong Li smiled. Hong Ming led the team, and we suffered the least losses, only 2 outsiders. More importantly, the Sand World has also entered my family. He looked at Hong Fan with a proud look. At this time, Hong Jian slowly interrupted. I heard that UK Cheng broke 2 of your bones. Hong Fan nodded and replied, he was stabbed, but the injury is not serious. Hong Wu snorted coldly, he hurt my nephew. If we have the chance to meet, I will definitely take his head. His nickname is Fire King Kong. He is the second best master in the clan with the ability to communicate with heaven and man. It is appropriate to say this. Hearing this, Hong Li smiled and filled several teacups one by one. It's okay to put the head of the 4-armed yaksha on his neck first. When Hong Fan has half the power of Jingsha Gong in the future, he can take revenge himself. He put down the teapot and gave Hong Fan his final instructions. Recover your wounds after you go back, and don't rush to practice. Remember not to go out of the city to practice casually in the future. All the daily supplies in your courtyard will be provided by the clan. Half a month later. September 1st, one of the 2 big market days every month. Outside the east gate of Jinhei City, flags on high poles fluttered in the wind, and people were shoulder to shoulder in the aisle separated by wooden fences. The cool autumn air mixed with the smell of sweat and the stench of cattle and sheep rolled up the hay and was finally separated from the carriage by the felt. This is a comfortable carriage pulled by 2 horses, painted dark red, and the Hong family's emblem was also on both sides. The carriage was parked next to the entrance of the market. The fat driver sitting in front of the carriage looked at the passers-by with arrogant eyes, forcing them to stay 3 feet away and not get close. In the carriage, Hong Fan was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. At this moment, he was in a state of introspection, using his spiritual sense to feel the operation of the Dragon Soul tree. But after an hour, there was still only a very thin cloud under the roots of the golden treasure tree. Oh, the bug failed. It's not that easy. Hong Fan sighed self-deprecatingly and opened his eyes. He slightly lifted the curtain of the carriage, and his eyes swept through most of the market with a flow of people. On the rows of wooden racks and platforms, many freshly slaughtered pigs, cattle and sheep were skinned and bled, and dismembered according to the buyer's requirements. Such a process had happened at least hundreds of times in the previous hour. However, the livestock, which weighed tens of thousands of pounds in total, only provided a small amount of nutrients to the sand world. Converted to the same amount for the whole day, it was about the equivalent of half a low-grade 2 iguan pill. It was tasteless to eat, but it was a pity to throw it away. Let's go back, Hong Fan ordered the driver through the curtain. Master Fan, I obey your orders. Hearing the voice of the master behind him, the fat driver immediately bent his back and changed his expression, saying flatteringly, the car is a public car. The servants are also the servants of the clan. But Hong Fan just passed a word to the housekeeper, and everything was arranged. Now, he finally has the dignity and treatment of a genuine young master. P.S. The author's ability to vent emotions is still relatively weak. Yesterday, I saw a few posts of arguing and spraying, and I was so angry that I couldn't write for a long time. But it is better than the beginning of the last book, when I was scolded by the sprayers and I could remember it for several days. What can I do? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.